Chapter 1193. Elder Wan Jing and the others were stunned. Jin Lei and the others had already made their move. Almost at the same time, the elders of the academy followed closely behind them. Quite a number of people were stopped. After all, there were many elders from the academy now. In terms of numbers, both sides were basically equal. However, there were still a few people who were faster. They surrounded Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue. Rong Xiu suddenly took a step forward and patted Chu Liyue's shoulder lightly. "Just stay here. Leave the rest to me." Chu Liyue felt her shoulders sink. Then something slid down her shoulder quietly. She opened her hand and quickly put that thing into her universe ring. She looked up at Rong Xiu. The two of them looked at each other and understood each other's intentions. She nodded without batting an eyelid. "Senior brother, be careful." Rong Xiu raised his hand and quickly set up a golden barrier around Chu Liyue. Then he moved and stood in front of Chu Liyue. "I'm your opponent." He raised his chin slightly. His expression was calm, but there was a noble arrogance in his bones. "Come at me together." Rong Xiu's words completely infuriated the few of them. Arrogant. In recent years, Rong Xiu was indeed famous as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. It was rumored that his birth mother secretly married someone from outside the world of God and gave birth to him. A few years after he was born, he was found by the people of the Yuntian Tower and found. At first, the Yuntian Tower planned to execute him directly. After all, this kind of thing was a great stain on the reputation of any first-rate family in the world of God. However, the Yuntian Tower kept him alive in the end. It was all because of his amazing talent. Later, not only did he survive in the Yuntian Tower, he even became the Holy Sun in one fell swoop. It was rumored that this person was cruel and ruthless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gained so much power and control over the Yuntian Tower in just a few years while the Yuntian Tower's patriarch was in seclusion. Therefore, Jin Lei and the others did not underestimate Rong Xiu from the very beginning. But now, when they heard his words, they still felt that it was ridiculous. After the fight just now, they had a rough idea of Rong Xiu's strength. It was normal for him to be able to hold on for a while, but it was impossible for him to challenge so many of them at the same time. Jin Lei was the first to attack. The others were not willing to fall behind, afraid that the treasure would be snatched away by Jin Lei, so they followed closely behind. Rong Xiu hovered in the air and raised his arm. A ball of golden light quickly appeared in his palm. At the same time, his aura began to surge wildly. With him as the center, a shocking pressure frantically spread out in all directions. Jin Lei's heart skipped a beat, suddenly feeling a little uneasy. After the tough fight just now, Rong Xiu's strength should have weakened, but why did it seem like there was no change from before? At this moment, Rong Xiu looked up. Two clusters of golden flames flashed in the depths of his deep eyes. Jin Lei suddenly realized something and a look of shock flashed across his face. "How did you refine a god?" Boom. He did not have time to finish his sentence. Rong Xiu waved his wrist lightly, and the ball of golden light quietly flew out. It was only the size of a fist, and it seemed to be wrapped in a layer of transparent glass. Inside, it was filled with a rich golden light. When it streaked across the air, it miraculously did not cause any energy waves. It looked very ordinary and it slowly floated forward. But a look of horror flashed across Jin Lei's eyes and he quickly retreated. This Rong Xiu, he had actually concealed his true strength before. He retreated in a panic as if the small ball of golden light was something extremely terrifying. But he was fast, but the ball of golden light was faster. Moreover, he quickly realized that the space around him had become thick and heavy. Every move he made was extremely laborious. Why is his godly territory suppression so strong? The people next to him finally realized that something was wrong, and they all exclaimed in shock. Jin Lei's throat tightened and the blood in his body almost froze. His mind was in a mess. Rong Xiu was the Yuntian Tower's holy son. According to the rumors, the bloodline power in his body had already awakened, and he had already cultivated the Holy Sun's golden body. The so-called Holy Sun's golden body was also a special divine body. It was a secret technique unique to the Yuntian Tower's Holy Sun. Other cultivators might not be able to cultivate their own divine body even if they became a high god. But the Yuntian Tower was different. Over the years, their holy sons had been able to activate their bloodline power and form a Holy Sun golden body at the same time. In other words, they had forged their own divine body. Because of this, the Yuntian Tower's Holy Sun's combat strength was usually extremely strong. But there were advantages and disadvantages to this. Once they cultivated the Holy Sun's golden body, they would not be able to cultivate a more powerful divine body. This was also a huge shackle for them. But just now he clearly felt that Rong Xiu clearly displayed a divine body suppression that was stronger than the Holy Sun's golden body. He had two divine bodies, and the suppression of this godly territory was naturally double. No, it was stronger than double. As these crazy thoughts flashed through Jin Lei's mind, the golden ball of light had already flown 3 steps away from him. Rong Xiu's expression was indifferent and his eyes were disdainful. His thin lips curled slightly and he spat out a word. The suppression was heavy and it was like a divine judgment. Break. Digression. February. What do you think about your man having 2 godly territories? Rong Xiu, calm smile waiting for praise. Pushed someone's face away. That's not important. What's important is that from today onwards, the monthly votes will be doubled. What do you think? February. I've already set the date for October's explosive release. The more monthly votes you get, the more explosive it will be. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1194. Following his command, the golden ball of light suddenly exploded. In an instant, golden light flashed. It was as bright as day between heaven and earth. The brilliant light instantly enveloped the surroundings. A powerful god territory descended. Before the few of them could fight Rong Xiu, they were already trapped in this god territory. They instinctively wanted to use their own god territories to fight back, but they quickly realized in horror that in this god territory shrouded in golden light, their strength was severely suppressed, and they could not use their own god territories. In fact, even moving had become extremely difficult. This was truly a situation where they were meat on someone's chopping board. If they could not think of a way to break free as soon as possible, they could only stay here and be attacked by Rong Xiu at will. Jin Lei actually had no intention of fighting with Rong Xiu again. Dual divine domains. Anyone who went up against him would only end up dead. However, even though he tried his best to retreat, it was already too late. This was because the distance between them and Rong Xiu was very close to begin with, and he had charged at the front just now. It was too late for him to retreat now. Compared to the few of them who were stuck in a dilemma, Rong Xiu, who was in the middle, seemed to be exceptionally relaxed. His gaze darkened and the space in front of him began to collapse inch by inch. It looked like it was about to reach where those few people were. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if he wanted to, he could directly take their lives now. Not only were Jin Lei and the others shocked, but the people who were fighting in the distance also noticed the commotion and looked over. It was fine if they did not look, but once they did, everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. In fact, even Elder Xu Feng and the others did not know how powerful Rong Xiu was now. Hence, when they saw this scene, the shock in their hearts was no less than Jin Lei and the others. Wasn't Rong Xiu fighting with them just now? How did he suddenly become so strong now? An elder could not help but murmur softly. Elder Xu Feng suppressed the surging waves in his heart. Isn't that obvious? It's obvious that he was hiding his strength. Although they did not know why Rong Xiu had suddenly changed his mind and used his true strength, it was still a good thing for them. This round was a sure win. I admit defeat. When the space collapsed in front of him, Jin Lei finally gave up without hesitation. His face was tense and the veins on his forehead were bulging. From this, it could be seen that although these words were spoken quickly, they were not done willingly. He wanted that treasure. After all, a king-grade origin tool was extremely rare in the Divine Ruins world. Even a first-rate family would crazily chase after it. But before that he had to be alive. If he really died here today, then it would be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. In the end, it would all benefit others. Jin Lei had seen many big scenes. Although his temper was irritable and arrogant, he could still bend and stand tall at crucial moments. Rong Xiu, as long as you stop now and let us go, I promise that the Golden Wing sect will never oppose the Yuntian Tower again. Jin Lei saw that the space in front of him was not slowing down, but the pressure on him was getting heavier. He could not help but swallow with difficulty and raise his voice again. I mean what I say. Rong Xiu smiled. Really? Of course. I'm the sect master's direct disciple. In front of so many people I will definitely do as I say. As Jin Lei spoke he could already feel the pressure pressing down on him, causing his face to ache faintly. It was as if a sharp knife was constantly scraping his face. Rong Xiu's eyebrows twitched slightly and he seemed to be smiling. You should have said this earlier. Do you think you still have the right to bargain with me now? Jin Lei's face paled. He could see the killing intent in Rong Xiu's eyes. Rong Xiu really dared to kill him. Jin Lei was finally completely flustered. Rong Xiu, I just want to snatch that treasure. I never had the intention to kill you. If you kill me here today the Golden Wing sect will not let this matter rest. You want to use the Golden Wing sect to pressure me? Rong Xiu's tone was languid and his expression was indifferent. If the sect master of the Golden Wing sect was here I could still give him face. Who are you? His voice was calm but it carried the most powerful killing intent. Jin Lei choked. Only then did he remember that although he was highly regarded by the sect master, he was not the person in charge of the Golden Wing sect. On the other hand, Rong Xiu, as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, was on equal footing with their sect master. Rong Xiu seemed to feel that these words were not enough of a blow to Jin Lei. Besides, even if I'm willing to let you go, the academy will still be in charge. The academy may not be so. Causing trouble in Fangzhou City was the same as causing trouble in Lingxiao College's territory. He originally wanted to end the battle quickly and snatch the treasure back. The sect master would definitely protect him for the sake of the treasure. But now not only did he not get the treasure, he was also in a quagmire. His life and death were in the hands of the other party. You did it on purpose just now? He suddenly realized something and blurted it out. Rong Xiu had been besieged previously, but there were wins and losses, so the two sides were actually in a state of tug-of-war. They also thought that as long as they continued fighting, they would be able to snatch the treasure back from Rong Xiu. But now that they thought about it, Rong Xiu was just stalling for time. He gave them hope, thinking that the treasure was within their reach. In reality, he was just exhausting their strength and patience, waiting for the elders of Lingxiao College to arrive. Now he had turned the tables and gained the upper hand. Even if they wanted to leave, it would be difficult for them to escape the siege of so many elders. In an instant, Jin Lei's heart was filled with endless regret. It was all in the heat of the moment. If he had known, he would not have followed them. Rong Xiu smiled slightly, admitting it. You're easier to bait than expected. It must have been hard on the sect master of the Golden Wing sect to nurture you for so many years and entrust you with such an important task. In the end, he was just a brainless person. Jin Lei clenched his fists tightly and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. His face gradually turned pale and soon he was covered in cold sweat. It's all his fault for encouraging us. Suddenly, a sharp reprimand came from the side. We wanted to compete fairly with you, but he urged us to join forces. He also urged us to chase after you. That's right. It's him. It's all the Golden Wing sect's fault. It has nothing to do with us. Rong Xiu. Elders. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. This debt should be on Jin Lei's head. In an instant the other families turned against him and the situation was reversed. Jin Lei was trembling with anger and then he laughed bitterly. Good. Since all of you have said so, then I don't have to be polite with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly shouted in a low voice. The next moment he actually forcibly broke free from Rong Xiu's god realm. In an instant his skin and flesh ruptured. Blood dripped everywhere. He went straight for Chu Liwei on the other side. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1195. Jin Lei's outburst was extremely sudden. No one expected him to suddenly turn around and charge towards Chu Liwei while he was still begging for mercy. Moreover, he did it in such a decisive manner. Chu Liwei realized what he was going to do the moment he charged towards her. She moved her feet and quickly dodged backwards. Probably because she was surrounded by Rong Xiu's enchantment. Although she was also in the divine realm, she was not affected at all and could still move freely. This also gave her a chance to shake off Jin Lei. However, Jin Lei was already a little crazy at this moment. He was on the verge of breaking down. When those people turned against him and pushed all the blame onto him, he knew that he was finished. The matter had already blown up. Lingxiao College needed an explanation. These clans and sects needed to shirk their responsibilities. Even the sect leader of the Golden Wing sect would not be willing to go against the school and Yuntian Tower for him, who had not taken back anything. He knew that he would become a sacrifice for the balance of everything. The situation was set. He had no other choice. Therefore, in his madness, the only way he could think of to protect himself was to kidnap a student from Lingxiao College. It did not matter who the student was or what her identity was. The important thing was that Lingxiao College would definitely not give up on their student in front of so many people. They would definitely give in. These thoughts flashed through Jin Lei's mind in an instant. Therefore, he did not hesitate to make a move. Even if he forcefully broke free from Rong Xiu's divine realm and was heavily injured. But at this moment he was about to lose his life. Why would he care about that? Black Bone Leopard. He quickly closed in on Chu Liyue as he shouted. He summoned his own contracted magical beast. To be more precise, it was a contracted magical beast. A vigorous black figure appeared in response to the call. It was a bun that was completely black. Only its eyes were dark green like ghost fire. It made one's heart turn cold just by looking at it. Its speed was even faster than Jin Lei. In the blink of an eye, it was already behind Chu Liyue. One man and one beast prepared to launch a pincer attack on Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue's eyes turned cold. Dumpling. Whoosh. The sound of wings flapping could be heard. A crimson-tailed red phoenix that was crimson all over appeared in everyone's line of sight. It flapped its wings and the flames on its body raged. Everywhere it passed, everything was burned to ashes. Seeing Dumpling, the black bone leopard hesitated for a moment, and a trace of panic flashed across its eyes. In the Divine Ruins world there were quite a few types of divine beast. But even if they were all divine beasts, there were still differences in strength. Among the divine beasts, there were two primordial divine beasts, the Great Void Phoenix Dragon and the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. Behind them were the divine beast clans that possessed the power of their bloodlines. Correspondingly, the stronger the bloodline power, the higher the status. Although the black bone leopard was also a divine beast, compared to Dumpling who possessed the bloodline of the primordial divine beasts, it was still lacking. The reverence for the two primordial divine beasts' bloodlines that were buried deep in its bones and blood made the black bone leopard fearful, and it even faintly wanted to submit. With just this moment of hesitation, Dumpling had already taken the lead to attack. Boom! A ball of red fire flew out. It went straight for the black bone leopard. The black bone leopard hurriedly dodged, but a part of its tail was still burned. Dumpling directly swooped down. Its sharp claws clawed at the black bone leopard's eyes. The two divine beasts quickly engaged in a battle. Jin Lei's expression froze for a moment. He did not expect that such a young and tender youth would actually contract with such a level of divine beast. This Chuyu might not be so easy to deal with. But at this moment, Jin Lei already had no other choice. So he did not stop his footsteps and continued to rush towards Chu Liyue. At the same time he used all his strength to withstand the terrifying pressure of the Rong Xiu and forcefully raised his axe. Fiercely chopped down. Crack. A small crack appeared on the golden barrier. Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched. She quickly retreated while circulating the force in her body. Bang! The barrier shattered. At this moment the distance between the two of them was extremely close. Jin Lei raised the axe in his hand again and chopped down. The void shook. A tyrannical wave crazily attacked. The Rong Xiu's expression turned fierce, and murderous intent surged in his eyes. However, at this moment, a burst of intense light suddenly erupted from Chu Liyue's hand. A ball of light shot up into the sky. It's that Emperor Divine Weapon. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Chu Liyue's heart trembled. Emperor Divine Weapon? So this was what they wanted to snatch. Immediately after, Chu Liyue saw that wherever the ball of light passed, a faint glow would scatter. The Rong Xiu's golden divine territory actually quietly dissipated. After seeing this clearly, Chu Liyue's heart tightened, and she suddenly felt that something was wrong. The aura of an Emperor Divine Weapon was actually stronger than the Rong Xiu's divine territory. She looked up. The light on the ball of light was gradually becoming gentler. From here she could vaguely see that there was something inside. Moreover, as the light flashed on the ball of light, the outline inside became clearer and clearer. More importantly, the aura on the ball of light was also crazily increasing. Jean Lei's axe had just chopped down when the sharp aura was swept away by the invisible wave of the ball of light and disappeared without a sound. Chu Liyue sucked in a cold breath. This thing, that's not a Emperor Divine weapon. Elder Shu Feng suddenly exclaimed in shock. That's a venerable divine weapon. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Everyone, including the many elders of Lingxiao College, firmly believed that the treasure that appeared from Blue Feather's abyss was an Emperor Divine weapon. According to the records of the college, the equipment refiner back then was indeed a king equipment refiner. No one would have thought that the last thing he left behind was a legendary venerable divine weapon. No wonder. No wonder he died not long after he finished refining it. It was obvious that he had exhausted all his energy and effort for this thing. In the dead silence, Jean Lei was the first to react. The situation of being on the verge of death had stimulated all his potential. He didn't even think about it before he charged upwards. Now the closest to the venerable divine weapon was Chuyu and the second was him. As long as he could surpass that ignorant brat and take the venerable divine weapon for himself, he would definitely be able to turn the situation around. When he thought of this, his eyes became even crazier. He chased after him with all his might. The moment Jean Lei moved, Chu Liyue moved as well. Rong Xiu did not pass the item to her for her to lose it. If it really fell into the hands of others, she would not be able to bear the blame. However, she quickly discovered a problem. Under the terrifying power of that treasure, she could not teleport. Because of this, her speed was slower than Jean Lei's. In the blink of an eye, Jean Lei had already caught up. The two of them were very close. Jean Lei directly threw the axe in his hand. It chopped toward Chu Liyue. You want to snatch it from me? Dream on. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1196. At this moment, Chu Liyue and Jean Lei were the closest to the venerable divine weapon. Who would be able to obtain it had become the focus of everyone's attention. When they saw Jean Lei directly throw his axe at Chu Liyue, the faces of the elders on the academy's side changed. Chu Yu. Elder Wanzheng's heart sunk. That kid was only at the middle stage of rank 7. How could he be Jean Lei's match? If he was hit by this attack, he was afraid that the hearts of Elder Wenxi and the others were also hanging high in the air. At this moment, no one could make a move. Everything depended on Chu Yu. When Chu Liyue saw Jean Lei, she knew that he was a god-level expert. He was a god-level expert who had stepped into the god-level realm. His level was much higher than hers. Even she knew that if she were to face such a person head-on, she would only have death waiting for her. However, they were so close to each other and no one could help her. She had to take this attack on her own. Looking at the ice-cold axe that was flying toward her rapidly, Chu Liyue did not hesitate at all and used her strongest combat ability. In an instant, a layer of golden armor covered her body. At the same time, a black shield stood in front of her. Jean Lei didn't think much of it and couldn't help but laugh. My axe is a high-level divine weapon and it's extremely sharp. Do you think you can just take out a shabby shield and clang? The two collided. He didn't manage to finish his sentence. His smug expression quickly turned into astonishment and disbelief. Because his axe was actually unable to split open the black shield. Instead, it was bounced back by the intense collision. Zoosh. He quickly dodged. The axe brushed past his face. He had actually cut off half of his ear. In an instant he felt excruciating pain. His face was covered in blood. Coupled with his already pale face, he looked even more battered and exhausted. That was not all. A strong gust of wind swept past him and at the same time, it slowed down his speed. The distance between him and Chu Liyue widened again. Jean Lei looked at Chu Liyue in shock and anger. He covered his ear with one hand and couldn't believe what had just happened. A young man who wasn't even 20 years old withstood his attack and even gained the upper hand. One had to know that in order to ensure that his attack would hit the target, he had used all of his strength. It was a great humiliation. What a joke. Then the young man's face appeared from behind the black shield. His delicate and clean face was pale, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He wasn't completely unaffected by the collision just now. However, in the end he was still in one piece. Jean Lei couldn't describe how he felt. He looked at the black shield in Chu Liyue's hand. There was something wrong with that thing. Ever since he got the axe, he had been invincible. Invincible. No matter how tough something was, no matter how solid the barrier was, He could easily split it open with his axe. Isn't the barrier that Rong Xiu set up like this? However, such a sharp axe was completely useless in front of the black shield. Jin Lei took a closer look and realized that there wasn't even a mark on it. This was definitely not an ordinary yuan instrument. Chu Luiyue sensed the madness in his eyes and immediately became alert. All the muscles in her body tensed up. Her opponent's power was much higher than hers. She almost couldn't take that blow. If she were to do it 2 more times, her arm would probably be crippled first. She made a prompt decision and continued to charge towards the thing above her. Dumpling! She let out a clear shout. A red figure quickly approached her. It was Dumpling, who had just finished off the black bone leopard. There were still a few pieces of flesh on its claws. It had been left behind when it had scratched the black bone leopard's face. Chu Luiyue leaped and jumped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling flapped its wings and its speed suddenly increased. Jin Lei instinctively turned back to take a look. His contracted divine beast, the black bone leopard, was now beyond recognition. Its face and body were badly mutilated, and there were several red flames burning on its body. It was rolling around in pain, trying to extinguish the flames. However, how could the flames of the red-tailed phoenix be extinguished so easily? As if sensing Jin Lei's gaze, the black bone leopard raised its head and looked over. All the coldness and ruthlessness in its eyes had disappeared. Instead, it was full of desire and hope. Now the only one who could help it was its master. However, Jin Lei forcibly retracted his gaze and chased after Chu Luiyue. At this time he was already a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. He couldn't even protect himself, so how could he care about anything else? The black bone leopard was already crippled and couldn't help him. He could only give it up. Seeing Jin Lei's action, the black bone leopard's only intact eye moved, leaving only mournful despair. It howled. However, Jin Lei turned a deaf ear to it. He mobilized all his strength, hoping to snatch that venerable origin device before Chu Luiyue. However, imagination was beautiful but reality was cruel. He soon realized that after the previous battle he had used up more than half of his strength. He couldn't catch up to the red-tailed phoenix at all. The distance between the two sides was increasing. This made Jin Lei more and more anxious. If he was unable to seize this final opportunity, then he would probably have to stay here forever. After thinking about it, he gritted his teeth and made a bold decision. Since it was a dead end anyway, he might as well take a risk. Even if he really died, he could drag someone down with him. At this thought, a strange pattern suddenly appeared between his brows. That was the golden wing sex totem. When the totem appeared, the origin power around his body began to boil. It began to rise at an abnormal speed. One of the elders suddenly exclaimed in surprise. "Oh no! He's burning his bloodline power." Of course, the disciples of the Golden Wing sect also had bloodline power. However, their bloodline power was different from that of ordinary aristocratic families. Most of them obtained the corresponding bloodline power through cultivation or other methods. And this was also an important condition for them to settle down in the sect. The stronger the bloodline power, the higher their status and the greater their right to speak in the sect. At this moment he activated the totem and burned the bloodline power he had accumulated with great difficulty. It was obvious that he was planning to fight to the death. Chuyu was in danger. However, as soon as he said that, everyone saw that Rong Xiu had already moved. He took a step forward with his long legs and quickly approached Jin Lei. His face was expressionless, as if covered with a layer of frost, cold to the bone. There was no doubt that he had already made up his mind to kill Jin Lei. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1197. Sensing the cold, murderous intent behind him, Jin Lei turned around instinctively. After glancing at Rong Xiu, he couldn't help but shiver, and a deep sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Why did Rong Xiu suddenly have such a strong murderous intent towards me? They had been fighting for so long, but Rong Xiu's emotions were calm and indifferent. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. Or perhaps he did not care about those things at all. Even when Rong Xiu attacked with all his might and suppressed all of them, he did not react at all. But now he had suddenly become like this. Jin Lei really could not understand. The pressing time and the crisis of life and death made him unable to think carefully about this matter. The only thing he could do was to rush toward Chu Luiyue at an even faster speed. Either he could snatch that venerable 1 yuan instrument, or he could kidnap Chuyu. Chu Luiyue flew upward with Dumpling. At this moment, the Venerable One instrument had stopped and was quietly suspended in midair. It was still enveloped in a layer of faint light. From where Chu Luiyue was, she could barely see the outline of the object inside. It seemed like it was also a sword. The closer she got, the clearer she could feel the pressure coming from above. Chu Luiyue held her breath. The aura of this sword was several times stronger than the Dragon Abyss sword. The Dragon Abyss sword was personally forged by Taizu. It triggered 81 Tianlei and was considered a high-level divine instrument. Even in the Divine Ruins world, the Dragon Abyss sword was definitely a valuable treasure. After Chu Luiyue came to the academy, she realized that although Taizu was unable to break through to the High God realm and remained at the Demigod realm, he was extremely outstanding in the aspect of weapon forging. However, every time she asked about this, Taizu did not seem to be willing to talk about it. After a few times, Chu Luiyue did not ask anymore. The sword in front of her was a Venerable One instrument. It was 2 whole levels higher than the Dragon Abyss sword. The degree of its tyranny was self-evident. Girl, this venerable artifact doesn't have an artifact soul. You can take it. Taizu's voice suddenly came from the bottom of his heart. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Artifact soul? That's something that only King Divine artifacts and above have. I'll explain it to you in detail in the future. All you need to do now is to snatch it. The Long Yuan sword was not bad, but compared to this, it was far inferior. Chu Luiyue pursed his lips when he heard Taizu being so excited. Taizu, please enlighten me. The Long Yuan sword has a sword spirit. Although it can't be compared to the sword spirit, with me around I can lend a helping hand. You just have to find the right time to transfer the sword soul to that sword. Such an opportunity could be said to be extremely rare. However, Chu Luiyue suddenly hesitated. But, Taizu, this Venerable One instrument belongs to the academy. It doesn't seem appropriate for me to take it for myself. According to what they had said, the academy had sent out many people and spent a lot of manpower and resources in order to retrieve this item. If she were to do that now, she would feel a little apologetic. Originally, this matter had nothing to do with her. She had only come here because she was worried about Rongxiu. During the crisis just now, Rongxiu had handed this item to her without hesitation so that she could take good care of it. But if she took the opportunity in the end to take it for herself, Taizu was stunned for a moment, then his voice became much calmer. You're right. I was a little impulsive. Just now, when he sensed that this Venerable One instrument didn't have an artifact soul, he was too excited and didn't think too much. But after listening to Chu Luiyue's words, he thought carefully and felt that it made sense. Although this Venerable One instrument is extremely rare, but just do as you think. Taizu comforted. It wasn't that he didn't have any regrets. Even he had only heard of the Honorable Master Divine Weapon in legends. Now that such a rare treasure was in front of her, Chu Luiyue chose to give it up. With her intelligence, she would know what this meant. You are the pride of the Shangguan family. Taizu sighed with emotion. With such a temperament, what would she have to worry about in the future? Chu Luiyue also smiled. Thank you, Taizu, for your praise. Then I'll take it back first. At this moment, Dumpling had already flown to the side of the light ball. Chu Luiyue jumped down. She didn't know how it came out just now, so Chu Luiyue wanted to try to get it back into the Qiankun ring. However, at this moment the golden lightning suddenly approached. Die. In an instant, Chu Luiyue's hair stood on end. Countless experiences wandering on the edge of life and death had already forged her instincts. She turned around without any hesitation. Jean Lei's fist, which was burning with the power of bloodline, was already in front of her. Chu Luiyue raised her sword. The divine power in her dantian suddenly surged out. Boom! The Long Yuan sword suddenly exploded with a powerful aura. The golden lightning shocked Jean Lei. Divine power? Could this young man really be a god-level expert? He didn't have time to think too much and attacked with all his might. The reason why he dared to fight Chu Luiyue with his bare hands was that his fist was already covered with a layer of scales. Although he had yet to completely forge his own divine body, he had already finished forming this hand. In other words, the power of this punch was comparable to a real divine body. Therefore Jean Lei was very confident. Playing. The Long Yuan sword and Jean Lei's fist collided. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1198. After a short moment of dead silence, an intense pain came from his hand. The expression on Jean Lei's face instantly froze. The sound of a sharp sword piercing through flesh was heard, making one's teeth ache. Jean Lei could even feel the sharp tip of the sword rubbing against his bones. A trace of panic finally appeared in his eyes and he quickly retreated. But, how could it be so easy to come and go as one wished? Chu Liyue stared at him coldly, her eyes sharp and cold. At the same time she held the sword tightly and pushed forward again. Helpless, Jean Lei could only change his fist into a palm and forcefully grab the sword blade. Without any hesitation, another large piece of flesh was scraped off. Fresh blood kept dripping from his hand, flowing down the black blade of the Long Yuan sword. The intense pain caused his face to turn pale. The next moment he clenched his teeth, grabbed the Long Yuan sword and threw it out fiercely. Although Jean Lei was already at the end of his rope, he was still a god-level expert. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Chu Liyue used her fastest speed to mobilize the godly power in her body and gave Jean Lei this blow. But in many aspects she was still inferior to him. For example, Jean Lei, who was in a state of madness, threw Chu Liyue out of balance in an instant. Her body was thrown to the side. A ray of golden light flew over quickly, and a gentle and strong force supported her, allowing Chu Liyue to quickly stabilize her body. But at this moment, a soft sound of collision suddenly fell into her ears. Chu Liyue instinctively turned her head to look. It turned out that after she was thrown out, the Long Yuan sword that she was holding had accidentally knocked into the ball of light beside her in the process of struggling. The tip of the sword had pierced into the ball of light by about an inch. That sound was produced when the tip of the Long Yuan sword came into contact with the sword inside. It was crisp, clean, and pleasing to the ear. Just by hearing it, one could tell that it was definitely a peerless sword. If it was any other time, Chu Liyue would be very happy to hear this sound and see this treasure. It was even better to have a chance to observe it closely. But at this moment her heart suddenly jumped. The words that Taizu said just now suddenly appeared in her mind. That venerable divine weapon did not have a soul. Chu Liyue hurriedly tried to pull back the Long Yuan sword. But when she tried, she realized that the Long Yuan sword seemed to be sucked onto the sword. It was motionless. At the same time she could clearly feel that something was gushing out from the Long Yuan sword and continuously entering the sword. As the Long Yuan sword's owner, Chu Liyue knew what it was. Sword soul. The accumulated energy within the Long Yuan sword began to frantically transfer. This time Chu Liyue was really shocked. She did not expect such a mistake. She increased her strength, wanting to take back the Long Yuan sword. But it was all in vain. The sword in the ball of light was extremely powerful. It was as if he was crazily plundering the Long Yuan sword. The others did not notice the situation on Chu Liyue's side. Jean Lei saw that Chu Liyue stood there motionless after barely managing to stand. He thought that she had been beaten silly and planned to follow up with another attack. However, as soon as he took a step forward, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He stiffened his neck and looked down. An extremely thin golden line swayed gently in mid-air. There was a drop of blood on it. It was dark red. Great panic surged in his heart. He turned his gaze and saw that half of his calf had been silently cut off. He didn't even hear the sound of his bones breaking because all of this had happened too quickly. The next moment that half of his calf suddenly fell under his gaze. He raised his head in horror and saw that Wuxia was already not far away from him. It was only because he had focused all his attention on the battle with Chu Liyue that he did not notice. Wuxia floated in the air and his noble face looked as if it was covered in snow. His pair of deep eyes were like a 1,000-year-old lake, and one look was enough to freeze a person. That was a strong murderous intent. He had one hand behind his back and the other hand was wrapped around a golden line. It was the line that had cut off Jean Lei's calf. Jean Lei's face was pale and his cracked lips trembled. Wuxia's slender fingers moved slightly. The golden thread instantly transformed into countless sharp blades of light and flew toward the golden lightning. No. Jean Lei sensed danger and was about to beg for mercy when he felt a chill in his throat. A gush of warm blood suddenly spurted out. It was his throat that had been cut off. Jean Lei raised his hand in a panic and wanted to cover the wound on his throat. But halfway through he realized that his hand had fallen off. Then it was his forearm and upper arm. Piercing pain came from all over his body. He opened his mouth, but only the sound of the wind could be heard. He knew that his body was gradually disintegrating. He could even feel the blood in his body gushing out, and it was quickly cooling down. Jin Lei widened his eyes and stared fixedly at Rong Xiu. However, his eyeballs exploded the next moment. Annihilation silent. Countless people were watching this hellish scene, their hearts and minds trembling. The so-called death by 1,000 cuts was nothing more than this. When they looked at Rong Xiu again, many people's state of mind changed. He used such a cruel method to kill him, but his expression was so calm and indifferent. This man was really too scary. But the next moment they saw an even more shocking scene. The young man standing next to the light ball suddenly fainted. The moment he fell, Rong Xiu went to his side and picked him up by the waist. Digression. Those who are fighting for the star of the monthly votes and star of the recommendation votes, please join the group as soon as possible to verify. Currently, the maximum number of monthly votes is 56 times 2. The star of the commentary vote is still pending. There are only 2 days left. Finally, the release time is October 13th at dawn. Raise the monthly votes. Countdown to release. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1199. Chu Luiyue seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream, she seemed to be constantly tugging and fighting with someone. She couldn't see the other person's face or figure clearly. She didn't even know if the person opposing her was a person or not. There was only an extremely tyrannical force that firmly entangled her and pulled her forward. She desperately retreated, wanting to escape, but her body was still uncontrollably dragged forward. Finally, she saw a huge black abyss appear in front of her. She glanced down and knew that she absolutely couldn't go to that place. Even though she didn't see anything and didn't know what was hidden inside. But her sharp intuition told her that it was dangerous. Her feet were firmly planted on the ground and she opened her mouth to shout. But everything was useless. She was like a fish struggling in the desert. Waiting for her was only endless darkness and death. Finally, she was still dragged to the edge of the black abyss. One of her feet had already slipped and stepped on air. No, the room was silent. This murmur was especially clear. Rong Xiu had been sitting by the bed and holding her hand. Seeing that she seemed to be showing signs of waking up, he was slightly relieved. But when he saw her painful and struggling expression, his heart ached again. Her brows were tightly knitted as if she was enduring great pain, and her mouth was still muttering something. Rong Xiu held her hand tightly, then leaned closer and kissed her forehead. Soon after, he half-hugged her in his arms and let her head rest on his chest. His other hand gently patted her hand, gently and patiently coaxing her. I'm here. Hearing this low voice, Chu Luiyue seemed to finally calm down, and her brows gradually relaxed. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was a blur. She closed her eyes and gradually adapted to the surrounding light. Then she could see everything in front of her clearly. This was an unfamiliar room. The room was clean and tidy. Although there weren't many things, those that were placed were extremely precious. There was a low-key nobility everywhere. Chu Luiyue immediately reacted. This wasn't her residence. No. Wasn't she outside just now? He's awake. Rong Xiu's voice came from above. Chu Luiyue raised his head and looked at him in a daze. Their eyes met. Her eyes were extremely beautiful. In the past, they were always bright and resplendent, flickering with a clever and crafty light. At this moment, it was unknown whether it was because she had experienced too many things, or because she had just woken up and had yet to regain her senses, but her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist. It was so hazy that she couldn't see clearly, and there was a hint of confusion in her eyes. Rong Xiu, senior martial brother? Chu Luiyue looked at him and called out subconsciously. He didn't even forget to add the last 2 words. Rong Xiu's eyes instantly darkened. They were so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. He bent down and kissed her lips. Their breaths touched each other and their warm breaths spilled out. Even the air seemed to have become ambiguous. Chu Luiyue was caught off guard, and before she could react, her territory was already taken over by someone else. She was about to struggle, but Rong Xiu had already grabbed her hand tightly and deepened the kiss. But when Chu Luiyue was a little out of breath and wanted to push him away, he restrained himself and let go of her. The man's deep eyes swept across her exceptionally moist lips. He raised his eyebrows and reached out to wipe her lips. His slightly rough fingertips brushed against her soft lips. It was a little rough. His eyes were very dangerous, as if he was suppressing something, but his actions were exceptionally gentle. After a while he stopped and pinched her chin, raising her face slightly. After looking around carefully, he nodded his head in satisfaction. You shouldn't be able to tell now. Although he wanted to continue, he restrained himself when he thought of the group of people waiting outside. Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched. At this moment she had already recalled everything that had happened before she fainted. She remembered that she had been fighting with that man, but he had flung her away. Then the Long Yuan sword had collided with the venerable artifact, and the sword spirit had also moved inside. And because she could not withstand the pressure produced during the process, she had fainted. After that divine artifact? She widened her eyes slightly and grabbed Rong Xiu's arm. That sword? Don't worry, that thing is fine. Rong Xiu knew what she was going to ask, so he immediately gave her an answer. His tone was calm with a hint of his usual laziness, as if he was talking about an extremely ordinary matter. No matter when, he seemed to be so calm and collected. Chu Liuyue's mood was also affected by this, and she calmed down a lot. She heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, she thought. That thing. The owner of that thing had once left a notebook in the academy. I'll help you look for it later. Rong Xiu's sudden words stunned Chu Liyue for a moment. What? Notebook? What did she want that for? Seeing her reaction, Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows and narrowed his eyes. Chu Liyue's heart suddenly thumped violently. Wait, could it be, you still don't know? Rong Xiu spoke softly with a faint smile. That venerable artifact has already recognized you as its owner. Chu Liyue slowly widened her eyes. For some reason it lacked a weapon spirit, and the sword spirit of your Long Yuan sword had entered it, causing it to become your origin item. Rong Xiu explained slowly. Logically speaking, the sword spirit of your sword would not be able to suppress that venerable artifact, and the only possibility was that it would be devoured and destroyed. However, for some reason the sword spirit took the initiative, and in the end this was also one of the reasons why you fainted. At that moment the two forces collided and you could not withstand it, so you fainted. Chu Liyue heard every word Rong Xiu said clearly, and she understood it very well. However, when strung together she was a little confused. To be more precise, she was completely stunned by the development of this matter. She really didn't want to take that thing for herself. She had even told Taizu about this matter back then, and she had clearly planned to leave it for the academy. How did it become hers in the end? Rong Xiu gently touched her face. Don't worry, everyone saw the situation clearly at that time. You did not deliberately take it for yourself but accidentally bumped into it when you were attacked. Also, no one knew that the venerable artifact did not have a weapon spirit. Everything was just a coincidence, and the elders will not blame you. Hearing this, Chu Liyue finally found her voice. She struggled to ask. Then, where are we now and where are the elders? Rong Xiu said. Oh, we are now in my residence, and Elder Xu Feng and the others are still waiting in the hall outside. Chu Liyue's gaze suddenly became strange. So how did I carried you back. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1200. These few simple words contained too much confidence. Chu Liyue couldn't accept it for a moment and fell silent for a moment. She had seized the venerable artifact that the academy had painstakingly snatched back. Rong Xiu carried the unconscious her back. Just like that, the two of them stayed in his room, allowing the elders to wait outside. Chu Liyue rubbed her temples. She felt that there was no need for her to go out anymore. Given the current situation, once she stepped out of that door she would probably die without a corpse. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. A young man's cautious voice came from outside. Senior brother Rong Xiu, is junior brother Chu Yu awake? Elder Wan Zheng and the others are very worried. They all said that if he hasn't woken up yet they would like to come in and take a look. Chu Liyue. Rong Xiu couldn't help but laugh when he saw her pitiful expression. After a moment he raised his voice slightly and said, Go and tell the elders that she's awake. After a short rest I'll bring her over. Yes. That person's attitude towards Rong Xiu was also very respectful. After responding softly he quickly left. Chu Liyue closed her eyes in despair. Won't I be beaten to death if I go out? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and said indifferently, Who dares? Although he had a smile on his face, his tone was slightly raised with a faint pressure, domineering. However, this expression only flashed past for a moment. He got off the bed first and then carried the person on the bed out of the blanket. Do you want to put on your own clothes, or do you want me to help you? In fact, in order to make it easier for Chu Luiyue to rest, he only took off her outer clothes and her inner clothes were still intact. However, when these words came out of his mouth, there was an inexplicable ambiguity. Chu Luiyue glared at him. You're still in the mood to joke at a time like this? We still don't know how to deal with those elders when we go out later. Rong Xiu kissed her face before reluctantly putting her down. He smiled lightly and said, Don't worry. It seems like you're really worried about what the elders will do to you. How rare. Chu Luiyue had just put on her outer robe and was tidying her hair. She turned to look at him when she heard him. What? Nothing. Rong Xiu's expression was as usual and his thin lips held a slight smile. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. On one hand, the matter with the venerable artifact was an accident. You didn't do it on purpose. On the other hand, you saved me, so it's only right that I stay and take care of you. With Rong Xiu around, Chu Luiyue felt more at ease. She was actually just thinking about how to deal with the elder's interrogation. After all, there were simply too many things that she had to explain to him. She took a deep breath. Let's go. The hall was silent. Several elders sat in a row. Wei Shiping and the others had already been sent back. Those who were still here were all important figures in Lingxiao College. Even Elder Bo Yen, who was not involved in the matter outside, was here. No one spoke. Everyone's expressions were different, but they were all rather complicated. From time to time, some people would look at Elder Wanjing, who was sitting in front. Elder Wanjing could only pretend that he did not see them. In fact, he was not in the mood to care about what these people thought. His mind was filled with the scenes from before. He thought that he had taken in a genius disciple and was very proud of it. But it was only now that he realized that this disciple of his was too good at hiding. Also, he was too good at causing trouble. Now even he did not know how to exonerate that brat. At this moment, footsteps came from outside the door. Everyone in the hall immediately raised their heads in unison to look at him. Two figures could be seen walking over, one in front and one behind. The one walking in front was Rong Xiu, who had changed his clothes. And one step behind him was Chu Luiyue, whom everyone was waiting for. The two of them walked into the hall. Countless pairs of eyes fell on them. To be precise, they were all looking at Chu Luiyue. In fact, when Rong Xiu appeared in the school, he would be the center of attention. Situations like this, where he appeared with others but was ignored by everyone, were extremely rare. Even if Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly, she could still feel those solid gazes on her, making her feel uneasy. Rong Xiu greets the elders. Sorry to keep you waiting. Rong Xiu bowed politely and calmly. Chu Luiyue followed. Student Chu Yu greets the elders. For a moment no one spoke. Chu Luiyue felt that the situation was getting worse. Fortunately, Elder Bo Yen was the first to speak. Rong Xiu, take a seat first. Rong Xiu shook his head and smiled. With the elders here, Rong Xiu does not dare to sit together. Rong Xiu declined and Elder Bo Yen did not continue to persuade him. Anyway, his personality had always been like this. He would do whatever he wanted and would not do. He would only listen to his own thoughts. No matter what others said, it was useless. Therefore, Elder Bo Yen turned his gaze to Chu Luiyue. This was the first time he looked at this new student at such a close distance. Although he had a deep impression of this student before, he did not take a closer look. But today he had to take a good look. In fact, he was not unfamiliar with the name, Chu Yu. From successfully passing the examination at the beginning of the month and becoming Wan Zheng's disciple, to being imprisoned in Min Mountain after entering the school for a day. Any one of them would leave a deep impression on people. Moreover, such a big incident happened today. Chu Yu. Elder Bo Yen stroked his beard, but his expression was still calm. Are you feeling better? Chu Luiyue quickly replied. I am much better. Thank you for your concern, Elder Bo Yen. Humph. Suddenly, a cold sneer came from the side. Do you really think I am concerned about you? If not for the fact that you took the venerable divine weapon, Guan He. Elder Bo Yen raised his voice slightly and looked at him with a warning look. Elder Guan He was so angry that he snorted and turned his head away. Am I wrong? The people of the school planned for months and gathered forces from all sides. It was not easy for us to wait for that item to appear and bring it back. But before he could even enter the academy, it had already become his. No matter what, we have to make him give us an explanation. His words did not hide the blame for Chu Liyue. Elder Bo Yen frowned and was about to say something when Rong Xiu spoke first. Elder Guanhe, you are wrong. It was not easy to get that venerable divine weapon, and it is also not bad that it became junior brother Tuning's. But you can't blame her for this. Elder Guanhe's expression changed. Rong Xiu, are you trying to absolve her? In order to bring that item back safely, you suffered a lot, but in the end, after all, the item had always been with Rong Xiu and he was the one who was attacked. He was one of the few people who had the most right to speak. Rong Xiu smiled. I am not trying to absolve her. What I said is the truth. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1201. At that time there were a few elders present. I believe everyone saw clearly that Chuyu only wanted to snatch the item back and prevent it from falling into Jin Lei's hands. He didn't mean to take it for himself. If Jin Lei didn't counterattack and Chuyu accidentally bumped into it, the incident wouldn't have happened. Rong Xiu's tone was calm and relatively objective. After that he received the approval of a few elders. That's right. The situation at that time was indeed like that. I can also prove that the child didn't do it on purpose. Elder Guanhe frowned and retorted. You can't just look at the surface. After all, that's a venerable artifact. For this item, those people from the Golden Wing sect didn't hesitate to follow it all the way to Fangzhou City. Who knows if someone would take advantage of the situation to get it? Elder Wanjing finally couldn't hold back and asked. Guanhe, what do you mean? Everyone knows what I mean. Chuyu, you know best why things turned out this way, right? Elder Guanhe didn't believe Rong Xiu's explanation at all. Although this news was kept under wraps at first, many people in the academy knew about it after it spread to Fangzhou City. Elder Bo Yen can testify to this, right? Elder Bo Yen paused. At that time some people might have heard the news by accident. However, this can't be used as evidence to accuse this child. If it wasn't for the benefits, why would he take such a risk? In my opinion, he had planned this long ago. Otherwise, why would he appear next to Rong Xiu directly? How could it be so coincidental that the venerable artifact didn't have a soul, and his sword soul took the opportunity to occupy it? Everyone fell silent again. Even Elder Wanzheng's lips moved, but he couldn't say anything. Putting the first part aside, the latter part was indeed too coincidental. It was inevitable that this would make people suspicious. Rong Xiu suddenly said, Elder Guanhe, do you know Jin Lei's realm? Elder Guanhe was stunned. He didn't go outside at that time, nor did he fight with those people. However, he more or less heard some of it, so he understood. Supreme God. Rong Xiu nodded. Not bad. His true realm was indeed this. Moreover, he has already cultivated half a divine body. No one was shocked by this. It was normal for cultivators who had broken through to become high gods to want to condense their divine body as soon as possible. In that case, do you know what level Junior Chuyu is at now? Guanhe was stunned for a moment before he said impatiently, He's just a new student, not my disciple. How would I know? Rong Xiu looked at Elder Wanjing. Elder Wanjing, you are her master. You should know her the best, right? Elder Wanjing hesitated. Middle stage 7th step. Impossible. Elder Guanhe immediately retorted. He clearly displayed his divine power at that time. How could he only be at the middle stage of the 7th step? This was something that he had heard from a few elders. It was definitely not fake. Chuyu is indeed at this level. The one who spoke was not Wanjing but Elder Wenxi. He had a rare look of seriousness on his face as he said word by word. I personally conducted the entrance test for him some time ago. At that time he was only at the early stage of the 7th step. He should have just broken through to the middle stage of the 7th step. I can guarantee with my reputation that what I said is true. Elder Guanhe was speechless for a moment. Since Elder Wenxi said so, it was basically true. Then what's with the divine power? Everyone looked at Chu Liyue in unison. Finally he had a chance to speak. Chu Liyue sighed in his heart and explained, that divine power was obtained by this student from a certain senior in the past. Of course he could not say that he snatched it. The hall fell silent again for a moment. The elders looked at each other. This reason seemed to make sense. After all, Elder Wenxi and Elder Wanjing did not have to lie about this kind of thing for a student. That venerable divine artifact did not have a soul, which was unexpected. Elder Xu Feng suddenly said. Even we, who witnessed its birth with our own eyes and tried our best to bring it back, did not notice anything amiss during the process. If even we don't know, then Chu Yu, who has been staying in the academy, should not know. I don't think it's possible that he deliberately planned it. Moreover, I've seen his sword, it's a high-level divine artifact. Logically speaking, the sword's soul stored in it could not successfully occupy a venerable divine artifact. But all of this still happened. In my opinion, maybe this child is fated with that thing. Elder Shu Feng was very open-minded. Actually, we've put in a lot of effort this time just to invite it back to the academy, and not to let it wander outside. Although it belongs to Chu Yu now, he is a student of the academy, so it can be considered as returning to the academy. From a certain point of view, this is also an inheritance of that senior, which is not a bad thing. What do you think? His words were reasonable and well-founded, causing many people to nod their heads in agreement. Anyway, that thing had already recognized its master. Unless Chu Yu's soul was destroyed, that thing would return to its ownerless state. But they could not kill Chu Yu, right? After all, he was a student of the academy. Moreover, his talent and other aspects were outstanding. More importantly, he wasn't completely wrong this time. At the very least, he helped Rongxiu. Just this point alone was already very rare. Elder Guanhe's expression changed, and in the end he only snorted coldly but did not say anything else. Elder Bo Yen looked over with a much gentler expression. Chu Yu, you don't have to worry. Since this matter has already happened, then everyone should accept it calmly. However, from now on you must work hard in your cultivation and not ruin the reputation of the academy and that senior. Does this mean he doesn't intend to pursue the matter anymore? Chu Liwei was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "Thank you for your advice, Elder. This student will definitely keep it in mind." She originally thought that this matter would be difficult to handle, but perhaps because of the support of Rongxiu, Elder Wanzheng and the others, it was resolved relatively smoothly. As for the matter of Rongxiu carrying her back and spending time with her for a long time, the elders did not ask much. Chu Liwei thought for a moment. Perhaps it was because this matter was not worth mentioning compared to the venerable artifact, so not many people cared. However, just as she was about to heave a sigh of relief, a voice came from the side, causing Chu Liu's heart to jump. Chu Yu. The one who spoke was Elder Hua Feng. Ever since Chu Liwei came in, he had been looking at her silently, and only now did he speak in a deep voice. He sat up straight and looked into Chu Liu's eyes, as if he wanted to see through all her thoughts. He asked word by word, "How did you pass through the academy's barrier without anyone noticing?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1202. As soon as he said this, the entire hall fell silent. In fact, many people did not realize this problem before because their attention was focused on the Venerable One artifact. At this moment, when they heard Elder Huafeng's question, they suddenly came back to their senses. That's right. This was indeed an extremely important question. The Academy's barrier had always been heavily guarded, especially today. After knowing that the people from the Golden Wing sect had chased after Feng Zhou, the Academy sent several elders to reinforce them and strengthen the barrier's security. No one was allowed to enter or exit the barrier at will. But Chu Yu had inexplicably come out. For a moment, everyone in the hall looked at Chu Liwei. Their gazes were different, but they were all filled with suspicion and scrutiny. The atmosphere was stagnant, as if even the surrounding air had frozen inch by inch. Elder Huafeng stared at her. The elders guarding the barrier said that they didn't notice any abnormal fluctuations at that time. One had to know that all the students in the academy had to report to the academy when they entered or exited the barrier. If they didn't report, the black jade token on their bodies would also send out a warning when they tried to pass through the barrier and leave evidence. But Chu Yu didn't. It was as if he had suddenly appeared outside the barrier, and he had directly penetrated the layers of obstacles and rushed to Rongxiu's side. If he was a high god expert, all of this could be explained. But he was only at the middle of the 7th stage. The Academy's barrier has always been opened without causing any commotion by the elders who are in charge of guarding it. And how did you do it? A new student who had just entered the academy for less than a month had such a method. How could it not be suspicious? Chu Liu's body tensed up and her eyes drooped slightly. She looked at the ground in front of her, but her mind was spinning crazily. At first, when she was about to go out, she was only worried about Rongxiu, so she didn't think too much about it. After waking up, she knew that this matter would definitely be dragged out by the elders for careful interrogation. Part of the worry in her heart came from this. How could she explain this? Could it be that she had learned it from her incomplete memories? That would be even more difficult to explain. She used to be a student of Lingxiao College, or else she wouldn't have those scenes in her mind. However, she herself could not remember what had happened at that time, so how could she explain it clearly to these people? Moreover, there weren't many students who knew how to open the barrier. Her identity was even more suspicious. There was a deathly silence in the hall. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Even the breathing had become tense. Even Elder Wanjing furrowed his brows tightly. Gee, what exactly is going on? Just tell me what you know. After all, she was his student. It would be a lie if he said that he didn't feel heartache for her and that he wasn't biased. Even now, this student seemed very suspicious, but he still wanted to believe in him. As long as you say it, Master will believe you. Chu Liwei was stunned and looked up. Elder Wanjing sat on the chair with one hand on the armrest and the other in front of him, clenched into a fist. It could be seen how nervous and worried he was. However, even though there was some helplessness in his eyes when he looked at her, there was more gentleness and tolerance. Chu Liwei felt warmth in his heart. Wanjing, it's not important whether you believe him or not. Elder Guan He, who was silent for a while, opened his mouth again. I already said that there's something wrong with this kid. You don't believe me? If he is really an ordinary middle-stage 7th-level martial artist and an ordinary student, how could he do such things? Wanjing, even if he is your disciple, you have to keep your eyes open. Elder Wanjing clenched his fist even tighter, but he only looked at Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei understood that everyone was waiting for her explanation. She took a deep breath and opened her mouth. I taught him. Before she could say anything, Rong Xiu, who was beside her, spoke first. Chu Liwei looked up in shock, only to see him standing with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm and at ease, and there was even a faint smile on his lips. Rong Xiu's words instantly caused a commotion in the hall. All the elders looked at each other, obviously shocked by his words. Elder Bo Yan's calm face finally showed a trace of shock and disbelief. Rong Xiu, what did you say? You said you taught him? Facing everyone's questioning gazes, Rong Xiu nodded calmly. That's right. Hua. Rong Xiu's reply was just 2 words, but it was like a bowl of cold water being poured into a pot of oil. It instantly caused a huge uproar. Rong Xiu, what do you mean by that? Elder Guan He finally couldn't help but stand up and stare at the two of them. Rong Xiu didn't seem to realize how big of an impact his words had on everyone present. He smiled and said, I can open the school's enchantment. This point all the elders should know, right? I taught her so she can naturally open it. What's so strange about that? What's so strange about that? Of course, everything was strange. Rong Xiu was definitely one of the best in the school. He was indeed able to open the enchantment a few years ago, but this wasn't the crux of the problem. Guan He, sit down first. Don't be so agitated. Elder Bo Yan raised his hand. Elder Guan He could only sit down angrily and look deeply at the two of them. He wanted to see what the two of them could say. Rong Xiu. Elder Bo Yan was the person with the highest status here. It was indeed the most appropriate for him to ask. You being able to open the enchantment is your business. But the crux of the matter is, why did you teach Chuyu? What's your relationship? And when did you teach him? He paused. This time, you've only returned to the school for about a month. Not long after you came, you left with Elder Shu Feng and the others. Logically speaking, you and Chuyu shouldn't have any interactions, right? Other than the day at the beginning of the month when the two of them met, they didn't have any other opportunities to interact. Unless the two of them knew each other. Chuyu, we are indeed old acquaintances. Rong Xiu didn't deny it and gave a vague answer. Everyone was silent for a moment. Elder Bo Yan frowned. Why didn't you? Halfway through his sentence he suddenly stopped. Right. That day at the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower, Rong Xiu did look at Chuyu a few more times. At that time he didn't take it to heart. After all, Chuyu was accepted as a disciple by Elder Wanzheng and was the focus of everyone's attention. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with Rong Xiu looking at him a few more times. But now that he thought about it, it turned out that they already knew each other. Before she came to the school, I taught her this. I thought she would need a long time to learn it, but I didn't expect her to understand it so quickly. As he spoke, Rong Xiu turned around and gave Chu Luiyue a praising smile. Well done. As expected of the girl he fell in love with. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1203. Chu Luiyue. If there weren't so many elders staring at her with their death stares, she would be much happier to hear this praise. She really didn't expect that Rong Xiu would actually take responsibility for this matter. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips as many thoughts flashed through her mind. Rong Xiu probably knew what was going on. He purposely said that to cover for her so that she could keep her secret. Did he already know that she was actually able to open the barrier? But why didn't he say anything before? In fact, Rong Xiu's attitude had always been like this when it came to matters of the academy. If she couldn't remember it herself, he wouldn't say anything. Thinking back to the conversation between the two of them on the night of the official admission, Chu Luiyue's heart moved slightly. She never doubted Rong Xiu's feelings for her, and she also knew that Rong Xiu must have his reasons for doing this. Even though she still didn't know what the reason behind it was. At this moment, Chu Luiyue didn't know that the moment she exchanged glances with Rong Xiu in the eyes of everyone, was a strong evidence that the two of them already knew each other. When had Rong Xiu ever spoken to someone so gently? His personality was cold and aloof, and after stabilizing his position as the Holy Sun for the past few years, his aura had grown stronger day by day. Now that he had returned, even many of the Academy's elders had to lower their heads and give him some face. It was only when he was talking to Chu Yu that his expression was calm and gentle, which was hard to see. Thinking back to when Chu Yu fainted, he immediately went forward and carried him back to his residence, and personally took care of him. Everyone's expression changed slightly. They didn't feel it before, but now that they thought about it, there were signs everywhere. Rong Xiu was someone who wouldn't even tolerate someone else's blood splashing on him, but he didn't hesitate to carry Chu Yu back. It would be strange if the two of them didn't know each other. Elder Bo Yen thought back to what happened before and he already believed most of it. I see. But why haven't I heard you mention it before? She's always had a yearning for the academy and wanted to give it a try. If I reveal that we know each other in advance, I'm afraid it will be a lot more inconvenient. Rong Xiu explained. These words were tactful but also arrogant. Lingshao College was highly respected and had many strong students. Here, no matter what your background was, you would be weakened. What was more important was your own talent and strength. However, this did not mean that one's background was completely unaffected. If everyone knew that Chu Yu and Rong Xiu knew each other and seemed to be quite close, then the attitude of the elders and students would be greatly different. With Rong Xiu's position in the academy, Chu Yu would definitely receive a lot of benefits. And this was what Rong Xiu meant by inconvenience. Everyone was speechless for a moment. They couldn't refute what Rong Xiu had said. So you're saying that you deliberately hid this relationship just to let Chu Yu cultivate in the academy? Although Elder Bo Yen said it as a question, he had already agreed with this statement. Rong Xiu nodded indifferently, paused for a moment and then smiled. Her temper has always been like this, so we can only let her be. Although it sounded like a reprimand, who couldn't hear the indulgence and protectiveness in his words? Everyone could see that Rong Xiu was going to protect Chu Yu to the end. Everyone was silent for a moment and then they exchanged glances. Who would have thought that this was the truth? With their relationship, it wasn't hard to explain why Chu Yu would suddenly appear beside Rong Xiu. That teleportation yuan instrument was probably given to him by Rong Xiu. Chu Yu, you took the risk to come out because you were worried about Rong Xiu? Elder Wanjing interrupted and asked. It was a big taboo in the academy to barge out of the barrier, and this was the only reason that could absolve this kid. Chu Luiyue blinked and nodded. That's right. Rong Xiu, who was standing at the side, lowered his eyes slightly, hiding the smile that flashed across his eyes. Elder Wanjing heaved a sigh of relief and laughed. Look, this kid didn't do it on purpose. Isn't it all because he was worried about Rong Xiu? This kid is sincere, how can you blame him for everything, don't you think so? Elder Guan, he snorted coldly, looking as if he couldn't bear to continue watching, but he didn't refute. He had also heard about how Chu Yu helped Rong Xiu block the critical blow, and no one could deny Chu Yu's sacrifice in this matter. Elder Bo Yen came back to his senses, shook his head and said disapprovingly. Rong Xiu, even if you and Chu Yu are familiar with each other, you can't just casually teach him the method to open the academy's barrier. This could be considered as one of the academy's top secrets, and other than the elders in charge of guarding the barrier, Almost no one else knew about it. The reason why Rong Xiu knew it was because back then, thinking about this, Elder Bo Yen quickly stopped his thoughts. Rong Xiu showed an apologetic expression. This is my fault for not thinking about it, and I'm willing to be punished. Punishment? How should he punish him? Rong Xiu and Chu Yu were both in the wrong, but the two of them also contributed greatly to protect the venerable artifact. It was really hard to judge. Rong Xiu, did you teach him anything else? Elder Bo Yen narrowed his eyes and asked. Rong Xiu shook his head. Nope. Elder Bo Yen sighed inwardly. She had even taught him about the barrier, so what did it matter if she taught him anything else? Sigh. Why were these kids so worrisome? That's good. In the future you should pay more attention to such things. After all, I asked you to come back and help, and for that thing to come back, it was indeed hard on you. Make up for your mistakes, this time we'll let it go. Elder Bo Yen did not intend to punish Rong Xiu because of this, but he thought that the barrier really did need to be strengthened. Rong Xiu responded. Thank you, Elder. As for Chu Yu, Elder Bo Yen pondered for a moment and looked to the side. Wanjing, he's your disciple, what do you think? Elder Wanjing leaned on the chair, frowning as he fell into deep thought. His expression looked very conflicted. Actually, everyone could understand. Chu Yu was his disciple after much difficulty, and naturally his heart would ache. If the punishment was too heavy, how could he not feel heartache? But Chu Yu was too bold this time and violated a few of the Academy's taboos. If he was not punished and warned, he might do it again in the future. Even more, other students would compete to imitate him. Then the entire Academy would be in a mess. Knowing that it was difficult for him to make this decision, everyone waited patiently. After a while, Elder Wanjing finally sighed and looked at Chu Liyue. Chu Yu. Chu Liyue's heart tightened. Student is here. Elder Wanjing paused before asking with difficulty. Is your talent as a Xian master higher than a celestial physician? Digression. Everyone is too awesome. Last day, begging for monthly votes. The countdown to October has officially begun. If you want to vote, please verify as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1204. The expressions of everyone in the room changed after his words sounded. They used an extremely strange expression to look at Elder Wanjing. What kind of **T question is this? We're asking you to consider how to punish him now. Who asked you to ask this? Cough. Elder Bo Yen coughed hard and gave him a look. Be careful. What are you doing? Elder Wanjing understood. But he didn't want to bother. His mind was filled with Rong Xiu's words just now. He taught him and then he learned it. To draw a Xian formation to open the Academy's barrier, one had to be at least a level 9 Xian master. Didn't this prove that Chu Yu was already a level 9 Xian master? He hadn't broken through to a level 9 celestial physician yet. How did he suddenly become a level 9 Xian master? What was this? Elder Wanjing had the illusion that he had nurtured his student so diligently, but in the end he had raised him astray. For a moment he even suspected that he had raised a disciple for the Xian masters. Kid, tell me quickly. Chu Liyue. Why was master always able to find a blind spot? Elder Bo Yen finally couldn't help but speak. But, Wanjing, we're talking about how to deal with his problem now. You can ask about this later. Don't. We've already asked. Let's listen to what the child has to say first. A voice filled with excitement was heard. But it wasn't Elder Wanjing who said this. Instead, Huafeng. Why are you joining in the fun? Elder Wanjing saw Elder Huafeng's shining eyes. How could he not guess what he was thinking? This is my disciple. Don't interfere. Elder Huafeng chuckled. He's your disciple now, but the Academy doesn't stipulate that a student can only have one master, right? Besides, weren't you the one who asked this question first? Can't we listen together? Hey. Why didn't he think of this just now? He was so focused on wondering how that kid opened the barrier that he actually forgot about this. He only came back to his senses when Wanjing asked that question. That's right. For this kid to be able to do this, didn't it prove that his talent as a Xian master was extraordinary? Why didn't he think of testing him when he took him in? If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have let Wanjing off so easily. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. It hadn't even been a month since he started school. There was still plenty of time in the future. The originally solemn atmosphere became somewhat subtle. Many Xian sect elders also looked at Chu Liyue differently. Elder Wanjing also saw it. He had a headache. Chu Liyue finally spoke when he began to think about how to dispel these people's thoughts that they shouldn't have. Well, she shook her head and said seriously. The reason why this student was able to comprehend the Xian formation so quickly was all because of Senior Rong Xiu's good teachings and some luck. But in reality this student's aptitude in this aspect is indeed average. Elder Wanjing heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. That's great. No matter how much credibility these words had, he would just take it as the truth. In any case, from these words, it could be seen that Chu Yu still wanted to follow him to practice celestial physician. That was enough. He was satisfied, but Elder Hua Feng and the others weren't willing to give up so easily. Chu Yu, don't be afraid. Our academy has always recruited the most outstanding students. The better the talent, the more diligent the cultivation, the better the treatment in the academy. You are only 16 years old now, but you can already comprehend the Xian formation to open the academy's barrier. It is truly rare. You said that you don't have any talent in this area. Do you believe it yourself? Elder Hua Feng leaned leisurely on his chair, but his eyes were fixed on Tu Liyue as if he had already seen through her. When you entered the academy, you only took the celestial physician examination. It was only natural that you became Wanzhang's disciple. It's fine if you want to cultivate celestial physician, but if you deliberately hide your talent in other aspects because of this, there's no need. You have to know that there are many people in this world who can't have all these cultivation talents at the same time. He looked at her with a burning gaze. Chu, this is closely related to your future. You must think carefully. Wanjing wanted nothing more than to kick him. He was snatching a disciple right in front of him. Elder Hua Feng automatically blocked Elder Wanzheng's resentful gaze. It was fine if he didn't know before, but now that he knew, how could he let Wanjing take advantage of him alone? This time he had to fight for it. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched, feeling a little troubled. She really didn't expect that she would attract so much trouble just because she was worried about Rong Xiu and rushed out on a whim. Elder Hua Feng and the others were all top-notch experts and had sharp eyes. Even if she said that, they wouldn't believe her so easily. If it were anyone else, they would be very happy to encounter such a situation. However, Chu Liyue had many concerns. It wasn't that she didn't want to learn from an expert like Elder Hua Feng, but Dabao probably wouldn't agree. After all, she had been playing chess with Dabao for so long. In fact, she was cultivating as a Xian master. Moreover, her schedule was already full every day, so she really didn't have any extra time to deal with other things. After thinking for a while, she bowed solemnly to Elder Hua Feng. Thank you for your kindness, Elder Hua Feng, but this student's energy is limited. Elder Hua Feng was stunned for a moment before falling into deep thought. That's true. A person's time and energy were limited, and being a Xian master and celestial physician required one to calm down and study carefully. If these two were to be done together, it might really be a little difficult. In that case, you still want to cultivate as a celestial physician? Elder Hua Feng was rather disappointed. After all, this kid's talent as a Xian master was obvious to the naked eye. It would be a pity if he gave up just like that. Why don't you spare a few days every month to come to my place to read books, play chess and study Xian formations? Elder Hua Feng still didn't want to give up, so he took the initiative to compromise and looked at Chu Liyue expectantly. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed that it wasn't without reason that some people were often cheated. If he was in such a hurry, who else could persuade him? As expected, he hadn't suffered enough in the past. Hua Feng, since Chu Yu has already said so, you should give up. No matter what, you have to respect the child's opinion, right? After confirming that his disciple wouldn't run away, Elder Wanjing was in a good mood. Can't you just let him refine pills properly? If he's dragged by you to learn Xian formations and in the end he breaks the barriers all over the academy like before. Before he could finish speaking, Elder Wanjing suddenly realized that he had misspoken and immediately stopped. Elder Hua Feng also felt a chill down his spine. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1205. The painful memories of the past appeared in front of his eyes, causing Elder Hua Feng's heart to tremble. He subconsciously raised his eyes and looked at Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue blinked in confusion and smiled. Elder Hua Feng, what's wrong? When she smiled, her originally delicate and clean eyebrows instantly became lively. Her eyes were like stars, cunning and intelligent. Elder Huafeng's head was aching. No, nothing. He took a deep breath. Well, since you want to specialize in celestial physician, then I'll listen to you. A trace of confusion flashed across Chu Liuyue's eyes. Just now, Elder Huafeng looked like he was determined to get it. Why did his attitude suddenly change? Elder Wanjing didn't seem to have said anything, however. She instinctively felt that she shouldn't ask too much, so she bowed respectfully. Thank you, Elder Huafeng. Sigh. Elder Huafeng looked at her. He still felt a little unwilling in his heart, so he added hesitantly. If you want to learn Xian formations, you can come to this old man's place to take a look. Chu Liuyue's heart warmed slightly. She could tell that Elder Huafeng really wanted to take her in as a disciple so as not to waste her talent in this area. It was indeed a rare blessing to be able to receive such love from him. This student will remember Elder's instructions. Elder Huafeng looked at her again. He seemed to have thought of something and shook his head with a sigh. Chu Liyue could clearly see that he wasn't looking at her. Instead, it was as if he was recalling someone through her. Hearing this, the other Xian masters and elders also stopped thinking. Elder Bo Yen rubbed his temples. He could now see that this Chu Yu was also a troublemaker. It was as if wherever he went he would always stir up trouble. There was no time for peace. Alright, let's leave this matter at that for now. Let's talk about the punishment when we come back. He looked around. The matter of the Venerable One divine artifact was really an accident. We can't blame him, so let's not talk about it. However, it was a big mistake for Chu Yu to secretly cross the Academy's barrier. Even if he helped Rong Xiu and protected the Venerable One divine artifact, it was not enough to make up for his crime. Moreover, this matter has already spread throughout the Academy, and the impact is extremely bad. He must be punished and warned as a warning others. After a moment of silence, an elder asked, in that case, how about we lock him up in Pingmin Mountain and let him reflect on his mistakes? Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. That's not good, right? He was locked up on the second day of school and was only released 10 days ago. If he's locked up again, it's somewhat inappropriate. Immediately, some elders objected. Chuya, of course. However, if the punishment was too heavy, Elder Wanjing would probably not bear it. What's more, the child didn't have any bad intentions. It was just a moment of impulse that led to the mistake. Locking him up in Pingmin Mountain is the most suitable choice at present. Anyway, he has already been there before. It doesn't matter if he goes again. As for the impact of being locked up continuously, he was locked up on the second day of school. Now that he did something like this, could it be worse? There were different opinions. Some agreed, some objected. Anyway, everyone had their own reasons. Among them, the one who objected the most was Elder Wanzheng. What a joke. How could he go to Pingmin Mountain again and again? Moreover, his precious disciple was about to break through to the 9th grade celestial physician. If he had not been interrupted today, he would have been showing off the 9th grade pill everywhere. How could he be reduced to arguing with this group of people here? If he was locked up for a while, wouldn't it be delayed again? No, I don't agree. Elder Wanjing said angrily. Everyone looked at each other and fell into a stalemate. Wanjing was the most protective. If he was really determined to oppose, they could not force it. However, at this moment, Chu Liue suddenly took a step forward. Master, I am willing to go to Pingmin Mountain to be punished. The room suddenly fell silent. Elder Wanzheng's face was filled with shock. Chu Yu, Master, this is my fault. I should bear the corresponding responsibility. If I hurt the harmony between you and the elders because of me, I will feel even more guilty. Chu Liuyue's tone was very sincere. Please let me go. Elder Wanjing reacted and was very touched. Styled. Even at this time, she still did not forget to think about me. This disciple, I did not take her in for nothing. Seeing his expression wavering, Chu Liue added another sentence. I promise that I will work hard in there and strive to break through as soon as possible. Maybe when I come out, I will have fulfilled your wish. His wish was, of course, to let her break through to the 9th grade celestial physician as soon as possible. Good child. Elder Wanjing was very comforted. You've suffered. In there, it was difficult to protect oneself. How could she have the extra energy to cultivate? These words were just to comfort him. However, it was very rare for his disciple to have such a heart. Chu Liue shook her head. I didn't suffer. Hearing this, Elder Wan Zheng's heart ached. Let's put those things aside. Take care of yourself first. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up. Thank you, master. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. His thin lips curved slightly, and there was a hint of a smile on his noble and devilish face. It was really. Rongxiu's residence was on a remote mountain in the martial artist area. At this time many people had gathered outside the mountain, waiting with curiosity and doubt. In a short time the things that happened outside had spread throughout the academy. Now everyone knew that the new student Chu Yu, who had been in the academy for less than a month, had secretly broken out of the academy's barrier and fought with Jin Lei and the others outside. Of course, the matter of the venerable divine artifact was kept a secret because of the elders' strict precautions. So until now the students subconsciously thought that the artifact must have returned to the academy. They did not pay much attention to it. After all, this matter was too bizarre and coincidental. It sounded fake. Therefore, everyone gathered here at this time, wanting to know how the elders planned to deal with the aftermath. That Chu Yu is really bold. He actually sneaked out. There were so many people fighting. Wasn't he afraid of dying there? Anyway, he came back alive. I heard that he even blocked a fatal blow for Senior Rongxiu. Doesn't this mean that he is friends with Senior Rongxiu in the future? Senior Rongxiu is a big shot. Even without him nothing would have happened. But sneaking out is a big taboo in the academy. The elders have already gathered over there. They should be discussing how to deal with him, right? I wonder if he will be expelled. No matter what, he is Elder Wanzheng's disciple. As long as Elder Wanzheng protects him, I think he will be punished at most. Everyone was discussing. Somewhere, Jiang Juan looked at the mountain peak and muttered with a complicated expression, Chu Yu? That Chu Yu, how did he get out? A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1206. Yes, she didn't care how the elders punished Chu Yu in the end, nor did she care about the situation of the battle outside. There was only one point that she was concerned about. How did Chu Yu, a rank 7 warrior, get out? One had to know that Elder Bo Yen had specifically instructed them not to worry and to go back and wait peacefully. The academy elders would settle those matters. After that, they even strengthened the academy's barrier to prevent anyone from sneaking out. But under such circumstances Chu Yu went out. And he even blocked a blow for Rongxiu? From the beginning to the end, this matter was strange and she couldn't help but be filled with suspicion. Maybe he sneaked out with one of the elders? Liang Xiaoxiao, who was standing at the side, said with some uncertainty. Jiang Jiwan's mouth twitched. Do you think that if he really did that, the elders wouldn't find out? Liang Xiaoxiao choked. Then what else can we do? He seems to be only at the middle of rank 7, right? Even if his actual combat strength is higher than his cultivation base, it can't be so exaggerated to be able to pass through the academy's barrier alone, right? That's something that even we can't do. Let alone him. Jiang Jiwan frowned. This was also the point that she found the strangest. The only possible explanation was that Chu Yu took advantage of the chaos to forcefully pass through the barrier. But for some reason the elders didn't seem to have discovered him in time and brought him back. Normally, if anyone passed through the barrier without permission, it would immediately attract the attention of the guardian elders. But Chu Yu succeeded, and in that chaotic battle he even helped Rongxiu. It was a pity that she didn't see it with her own eyes. Forget it, there's no point in us thinking so much. If he really made a mistake, the elders will punish him. Liang Xiaoxiao didn't think that there was anything to be concerned about. What exactly is going on? Won't we know when Chu Yu's punishment is out? Jiang Jiwan could only nod. Everyone waited for a while more before they finally saw people walking out of the mountain peak. The elders are out. The crowd was in an uproar and they all looked over with rapt attention. First, several elders walked out in a single file. After they walked out, they didn't stop and went their separate ways. Thus, everyone turned their attention to the person who came out from the back. When most of the elders had left, finally, a few special figures appeared. The person at the front was tall and slender, wearing a white brocade robe. Even though there was still some distance between them, it still couldn't hide her peerless beauty. It was Rongxiu. Following closely behind him was a young man. Needless to say, that person was Chu Yu. The two of them walked out one after another. Beside him were Elder Wanzheng and Elder Bo Yen. The other elders all left separately. Only these few people came out and stood still as if they were talking about something. Jiang Jiwan stared at him. If it weren't for the fact that Rongxiu's mountain was surrounded by an extremely complicated barrier that he had personally set up all year round, she would have gone forward to listen to what they were talking about. After a while, Elder Wanjing patted Chu Yu's shoulder and left with Elder Bo Yen and Elder Bo Yen. Now only Rongxiu and Chu Yu were left. The two of them stood facing each other. Even though the people waiting outside couldn't hear what they were talking about, they had to admit that when the two of them stood together, they were unexpectedly harmonious. The forest was lush and the young master was like jade. Logically speaking, Chu Yu's appearance couldn't be compared to Rongxiu's, but the aura around him was rare. This allowed him to stand in front of Rongxiu without being at a disadvantage. Why did the elders leave? Don't they plan to punish Chu Yu? Shouldn't be. Even if Chu Yu had a meritorious performance this time, the elders have repeatedly ordered that he can't go out as he pleases. If he doesn't get punished in the end, wouldn't that be letting everyone do what they want? That's right. And why did senior brother Rongxiu and Elder Bo Yen stand there and talk for so long? I don't know what they're talking about. Although everyone was filled with curiosity, they didn't dare to barge in and could only secretly guess. Let's go, I'll send you over. Rongxiu raised his chin and a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. You should be tired of waiting. Chu Liwei blinked and laughed. Senior brother Rongxiu really knows my situation like the back of his hand. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. Don't call me that. Chu Liwei relied on the fact that he was much taller than him and could completely cover himself. He wasn't afraid of being seen by the people outside, so he became more and more presumptuous. I entered the school a few years later than you, shouldn't I call you senior brother? Rongxiu chuckled, took a step closer, lowered his voice and teased. You have your own way of calling me, why do you have to be the same as others? Chu Liwei glanced at him with a smile, then took the lead to turn around and said leisurely, Senior brother Rongxiu, let's go quickly. I don't dare to take up too much of your time, or else I'll be criticized later. Rongxiu strode forward with his long legs and caught up with him. I didn't know that after coming to Lingxiao College, you've become so timid. Chu Liwei snorted lightly. How am I timid? I'm just speaking the truth. Let's not talk about other things just now, there are many people watching my every move. She curled the corners of her lips. Believe it or not, as long as I make the slightest mistake or show the slightest bit of offense to you, they will seize the opportunity to criticize me without restraint. For the next period of time, I still want to cultivate in peace in the school. In the hearts of those people, Rongxiu was definitely not as simple as a powerful senior brother. His outstanding talent and strength had already become an existence that countless people looked up to and longed to catch up to. His name firmly occupied the Qingyun role and became the symbol of the strong. Chu Liwei felt that it was better for her to be more honest. Rongxiu suddenly laughed and slowly said, That's right. So you want to quietly study and cultivate in the school? I really didn't see that. Chu Liuyue's face heated up slightly. There was no way to refute this. She had only been in the school for slightly more than 20 days, but she had already caused so much trouble. No matter who saw it, she was a person who didn't know her place. But, Rongxiu slightly dragged the end of his words and lowered his voice as if he was whispering in her ear, If you really want to offend me, I'm waiting for you. Chu Liwei stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him. No matter what his identity was, his thick skin and temperament had not changed at all. Rongxiu. Do you really think that I won't dare to do anything to you in front of those people? Rongxiu looked at her and suddenly smiled. He answered with great anticipation, You're most welcome. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1207. Chu Liwei. Admit defeat. Sure enough, in this aspect she shouldn't have wishfully thought of winning against someone. The two of them headed towards Pingmin Mountain. At this time the crowd waiting in the distance finally realized something. The direction they are heading towards seems to be Pingmin Mountain? Could it be that the elders want to lock Chuyu up there? It can't be. Hasn't Chuyu been locked up once before and he just came out not long ago? Even if the elders want to punish him, it doesn't seem appropriate to choose this place. What's wrong with this? He did something wrong, so it's only right for him to be punished. Could it be that just because he went there not long ago he can be exempted from punishment? It's true. It seems that senior brother Rongxiu is responsible for bringing him there. However, why do the two of them seem to be chatting happily? Actually, I think so too. Just now, senior brother Rong Xiu seemed to be smiling. Did you see that? I heard that he has a cold and arrogant personality, and usually doesn't even like to talk much. Why is his attitude towards that Chuyu so good now? Haven't you heard? That Chuyu helped senior brother Rong Xiu block a blow before. How can ordinary people compare? It's not strange that senior brother Rong Xiu would treat him like this. Jiang Juwan looked at the two figures that were getting further and further away, bit her lips and turned to leave. With the previous experience and Rong Xiu's lead, Chu Luiyue quickly arrived at Pingmin Mountain this time. When she arrived at the mountain, she looked at Rong Xiu with some surprise. Why do I feel that you seem to be very familiar with this place? From Rong Xiu's residence to here, the distance was actually not close. But on the way here, Rong Xiu led the way without any hesitation, and took her to the most convenient path. Chu Luiyue even felt that he should have been here more than once. Sure enough, Rong Xiu nodded. I've been here a few times. Chu Luiyue laughed. Who would have thought that the outstanding senior brother Rong Xiu would actually come to this place? Don't tell me you did something wrong and got locked up in here? Rong Xiu gave her a meaningful look. Thanks to a certain someone, he had been here many times. I've been to most of the places in the academy. Pingmin Mountain was nothing. You, on the other hand, seem to have always wanted to come here. What's the fun in here? Chu Luiyue didn't say much to Rong Xiu because all the elders were present. However, she did not hide it. She nodded frankly and looked at Mount Pingmin in front of her. Yes. I don't know why, but I keep feeling that cultivating here seems to be faster and more comfortable. Rong Xiu's eyesight was better than others and his mind was smart. Even if she didn't say anything, he could see it. The density of the force in Mount Pingmin is the same as the outside world. But since you like it here, then it's up to you. Rong Xiu smiled and didn't seem to have the intention to continue asking. Go. See you in a month. This time, as a warning, Chu Luiyue was given a month's time. Elder Wan Zheng was originally against it, but he accepted it under Chu Luiyue's persuasion. However, he nagged Elder Bo Yan for a long time because of this. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. You'll still be staying in the academy for a month? Rong Xiu nodded. Yes. I have some things to deal with here. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and asked tentatively. Is it related to that venerable artifact? This matter was very big and many first-rate sects were involved. Rong Xiu killed Jin Lei with his own hands, so there would be a tug-of-war between these parties. Suddenly, she thought of something and looked at Rong Xiu in shock. Wait, you deliberately made me stay here for a month? That's right, this 1 month's time limit was actually proposed by Rong Xiu. At first, Elder Bo Yan wanted to lock her up for half a month, but Rong Xiu said that this matter had a serious impact, and if it wasn't dealt with properly, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. He might as well lock her up for a month. Then all the rumors in the academy would disappear automatically. Moreover, he could use this opportunity to grind down Chu Luiyue's youthful and hot-headed temper. Elder Bo Yan felt that it made sense, so he agreed. At first, Chu Luiyue thought that Rong Xiu only said it because he guessed that she wanted to go to Mount Pingmin, but now it seemed that he had planned it long ago. You don't have to worry about those trivial matters. Rong Xiu said calmly. With me around, no one can find trouble with you. Of course, Chu Luiyue would be in trouble. That venerable divine weapon was snatched back by everyone with great effort, but in the end, it fell into her hands and recognized her as its master. If the people from the Golden Wing sect and the other sects really wanted to pursue the matter, she would definitely be involved in it. Chu Luiyue felt something surging in her heart, but she also felt that there were some things between them that didn't need to be said. They both understood each other. It was as if with this man around, she didn't need to worry about him even if she caused a huge disaster. He would naturally take care of it. He was the only one who could give her such a sense of security. She suppressed these thoughts and her red lips curled up into a bright smile. Then we'll meet in a month's time. Rong Xiu was infected by her smile and his thin lips curled up slightly. Chu Luiyue walked forward. But after taking 2 steps, she seemed to have suddenly thought of something and turned back. Right, there's something. Rong Xiu nodded, indicating for her to speak directly. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, lowered her voice slightly and asked. Rong Xiu, do you know the student whose name was erased from the Azure Cloud roll? Rong Xiu's hands behind his back slowly clenched, but his expression was still as indifferent as before. I do. What's wrong? Have you been to her herb garden? Herb garden. Yes, it's the one that the dean specially left for her? Chu Luiwei asked with some uncertainty. It's the dean's work, right? Yes, I've been there before, but it was sealed, so I didn't go there again. You went there? Chu Luiwei shook her head with a smile. How could I enter that place? The elders are guarding it very strictly. I just happened to see it from afar when I went to the Medicine Wind Valley to get the herbs. Rong Xiu's tensed body slightly relaxed. Actually, the herbs inside are not much different from the Medicine Wind Valley. It doesn't matter if I go or not. Chu Luiwei shook her head. No, I feel that there's something wrong with that herb garden. Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly as he looked at her eyes. What's wrong? Chu Luiwei paused for a moment. I saw a large patch of dancing lotus blooming over there. This thing is extremely precious. It's already very rare to see one or two, but there are so many. The dancing lotus only blooms once every few hundred years. It's really inconceivable to get so many. Rong Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. It's not that difficult. Chu Luiwei was stunned and narrowed her eyes. How do you know? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1208. The two of them faced each other and there was a moment of silence. Then Rong Xiu smiled and said casually, the dancing lotus is indeed an extremely rare treasure in the Tianling Empire, but in the Divine Ruins world, it's much easier to obtain this thing. Many aristocratic families with thousands of years of history will even send people to plant and nurture it. Lingshao College has tens of thousands of years of history, so it's really not a big deal to have these. He spoke tirelessly and calmly, with a kind of power that made people unconsciously believe him. There are only a few scattered plants in the Medicine Wind Valley because the Medicine Wind Valley occupies a very large area and has countless kinds of herbs. The elders in charge of guarding it are responsible for all of them, so they naturally won't put all their attention on one kind of herb. After all, there are some more precious herbs in the Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Luiwei frowned. That does make sense. Although the dancing lotus is good, it's extremely picky about the environment it grows in. Moreover, it requires a long time of careful care. It's actually very energy-consuming and patient. She murmured and shrugged. To be able to grow so many dancing lotuses, that person must really like it. Rong Xiu paused and asked with a smile, You don't like it? I like it. Chu Luiwei nodded. If she didn't like it, she wouldn't have paid special attention to this matter. If only I had the chance to go in and take a look. But it's probably impossible. Chu Luiwei said regretfully. First of all, that herb garden was someone else's private place. Secondly, that person was no longer in the academy. Most importantly, from the current situation, that person seemed to be in existence that couldn't be mentioned in the academy. It was even more difficult to go to the herb garden that she left behind back then. Forget it. I'll go in first. Chu Luiwei put away her thoughts, waved at Rong Xiu and turned towards Mount Pingmin. She took out her black jade token and threw it out. Buzz. The black jade token made contact with the barrier, producing a slight fluctuation. An entrance slowly opened. Chu Luiwei stepped in. When her figure completely disappeared within the barrier, Rong Xiu hovered in midair for a long time before muttering to himself in a low voice. Naturally, that day will come. That was planted for you in the first place. Then he finally turned around and left. You again. Chu Luiwei had just stood in front of the seventh tower when he heard a familiar old voice. It was rare for Chu Luiwei to feel embarrassed. He coughed to cover it up, cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. Student Chu Yu greets Elder. Long time no see. How have you been, Elder? You've only been gone for 10 days. Is that considered a long time? The other party spoke very straightforwardly with a hint of disdain. Chu Luiwei. Elder, you're right. Come in. Chu Luiwei thanked him again before stepping forward and pushing the door open. Everything in the hall was the same as when she had left. Of course, it was only 10 days in between. This was normal. The door closed automatically behind her. The 7 doors glowed brightly and floated quietly in front of her. Bo Yan has already told me about you. You're a troublemaker. You've only been out for a few days and you're back? Chu Luiwei lowered her head slightly and admitted her mistake. You're right. It's all my fault. Probably because her attitude was good, the other party didn't keep interrogating her. Alright, there's no point in saying this. If you really want to admit your mistake, take action in the future. Chu Luiwei obediently said, yes. The process is the same as before. Choose. The other party spoke for a while and went straight to the point. Chu Liwei raised her eyes and looked at the 7 doors in front of her. Her gaze swept across the doors one by one. From the outside, these doors were completely the same. Even the aura and pressure emitted from them were the same. But there seemed to be some kind of force guiding them. She raised her hand and pointed at the 3rd door on the left. I choose this. The hall was silent. But the air seemed to have frozen for a moment. Although that feeling was fleeting, Chu Liwei was still very sharp. At this moment she was sure that she had chosen the previous one. As expected, a low and slightly doubtful voice sounded in her ears. Are you sure? Chu Liwei suppressed the fluctuations in her heart and said calmly, I'm sure. After Rong Xiu sent Chu Liwei to Mount Pingmin, he returned to his residence. Unlike ordinary students, he lived alone on a mountain. This treatment was the same as the elders of the academy. Of course, no one had any objections to this. If anyone had the same talent and ability as him, they would also do the same. Before he reached the door, Rong Xiu seemed to have noticed something and stopped in his tracks. He stared at the room in front of him and walked forward. Back in the room, he closed the door, then walked around the screen and went inside. It was unknown when Dugumobao had appeared here. Senior. Rong Xiu clasped his fist and bowed. Dugumobao looked at him coldly. She was locked up in Mount Pingmin again? Rong Xiu nodded. 1 month. Humph. Dugumabao's face was even colder. You are very generous to let her go just like that. Rong Xiu raised his eyes slightly, and there seemed to be a glimmer of light in his deep eyes. He smiled slightly and said lightly, that is. She naturally wants to go there. Digression. Wishing the motherland prosperity. Happy National Day. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1209. Pingmin Mountain 7th Tower. After a short silence, the voice finally sounded again. Since you have chosen, just go in. Chu Liuyue's heart moved. This time she was not asked to choose again. She smiled, thanked him and walked towards the door. When her hand was just on the door, the man suddenly asked, Did you come here on purpose this time? Chu Liuyue's slightly lowered eyes flashed with a faint light. When she raised her eyes again, it had returned to calmness. Elder, what do you mean? She asked in surprise with a trace of confusion on her face. After a pause, the voice sounded. It's okay, you can go in. The tone was calm. Chu Liyue nodded and did not ask any more questions. She pushed the door open and entered. The door was closed. In the hall, silence was restored. After a long time, a faintly discernible low voice rang out. I'm probably old and confused. This was purely an accident. If that kid really had the ability to plan such a big scheme, it would be too amazing. Now it seemed that he was thinking too much. However, Chi seemed to be really fated with that person. The first time was a coincidence, the second time was a coincidence. Then, what about the third time? Maybe it's time to check this child's background. Chu Liyue did not know anything about these things outside. But at this time she was too lazy to care about those things. Because she just wanted to stay in this place and cultivate. Looking at the messy lines on the 4 walls, Chu Liyue felt inexplicably familiar. It was clearly the second time she came here and it was only a few days apart, but it felt like she had not seen it for a long time. Chu Liyue took a deep breath. The surrounding power silently surged and rotated around her, as if it had been missing her for a long time. Chu Liyue was slightly stunned. For a moment something seemed to flash through her mind. But this feeling quickly disappeared, and before she could grasp it and figure out what it was, it had already disappeared. She shook her head to clear her head. Then she sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Almost as soon as she closed her eyes and concentrated, circulating the origin power in her body, the energy around her rushed into her body. Chu Liyue's aura began to rise at an extraordinary speed. Sigh. Elder Wanjing sighed again. Elder Huafeng finally couldn't take it anymore and spoke up. Wanjing, you've been sighing ever since you came back. Can you stop being like this? Just listening to it makes me annoyed. Elder Wanjing lifted his eyelids, lazily glancing at him. Say, what do you know? It wasn't your disciple who was locked up. Wanjing, let me tell you, if you continue to speak like this, there's no need for us to continue this conversation. Elder Huafeng pretended to leave. Don't mock me like this. Even at this time, how could he not forget to show off? No matter how you talk, Chuyu is already locked up. Can you persuade Bo Yen to let him go? However, Elder Wanjing didn't fall for his trick and snorted. A month. Do you know how much I can teach him in 1 month? A good seedling was wasted just like that. What can we do? Things have already come to this. Elder Huafeng stroked his beard. However, I think you shouldn't always sigh like this. Can't you think on the bright side? Actually, if you think about it carefully, that kid didn't lose out on this trip. Do you think anyone has the chance to obtain a venerable artifact? Even they didn't have such a treasure. That's true. Speaking of this, Elder Wanzheng's face finally showed some joy. His talent is already good. With this, it can be said that he's like a tiger that has grown wings. This is a good thing, but don't be too happy too early. Elder Huafeng shook his head. Possessing a treasure is a crime. With such a treasure on Chuyu, it's inevitable that some people will be jealous. Originally, this thing should have belonged to the academy. In the end, it became Chuyu's. It was fine if the students didn't know, but the elders might not all be convinced. During this period of time, he will be imprisoned in Min Mountain. Although he will suffer a little, at least he will be safe. But when he comes out, Elder Huafeng's face showed some worry. Hearing this, Elder Wanjing suddenly laughed. Don't worry. These aren't problems. That kid has a backer. Oh? It seems that this kid's background is also unusual? I knew it, that kid's words and actions don't seem like a child from an ordinary family. No, I don't know his background. Elder Wanjing smiled and shook his head, saying mysteriously, I only know that even if he really causes a bigger disaster than this, his life will still be in danger. Someone will definitely protect him to the end. Elder Huafeng was stunned when he heard this, and his face became serious. What do you mean by this? Elder Wanjing chuckled, but he wasn't willing to reveal any more. I can't talk about this matter anymore. But you only need to know that the kid looks gentle and harmless and has no background, but in fact, he is a real iron plate. If anyone wants to find trouble with him, you're just courting death. The news that Chu Luyue was imprisoned in Min Mountain for a month quickly spread in the academy. Everyone had different reactions. Some were worried, some were gloating. Even those who disdained this name before had to start to re-examine it at this time. This freshman is so troublesome. In fact, it also proves that he is unusual from the side, right? If he didn't have any real ability, how could he survive that fierce battle? Not to mention it was rumored that he even blocked a blow for Rongxiu. In addition, he defeated the level 8 warrior Lu Ziyan as a rank 7 warrior. Everything was showing that this new student had more potential than anyone had expected. But no matter what, after this incident, Chu Luyue finally became famous in the academy. The name, Chu Yu, began to be known by everyone, and for a period of time, it became the topic of everyone's conversation. But this situation didn't last for long. Because something even more eye-catching happened. The sect master of the Golden Wing sect, Jin Minyao, personally came to the academy. Donghuang Bell Tower, 3rd floor hall. The atmosphere was solemn. There were 2 rows of chairs in the hall. Elder Bo Yen sat at the head seat on the right, and beside him were the other elders of the academy. Sitting opposite him was a middle-aged man with a well-built body. He had a square face with black stubble and wore a black robe. He sat there with a majestic aura. This person was the sect master of the Golden Wing sect, Jin Minyao. With a sullen face, he questioned, So, your academy doesn't intend to give an explanation for the death of my beloved disciple? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:10. Elder Bo Yen suppressed the anger in his heart and explained. Sect leader Jin, I've already made it clear to you just now. This matter is not Lingxiao College's fault. You can only blame that disciple of yours for being too greedy. Logically speaking, that divine artifact belongs to my Spirit Firmament Academy. However, due to the appearance of Grey Feather's Abyss, there were many people who wanted it, so we didn't say much. However, after that item fell into our hands, Jin Lei still pursued it relentlessly. In the end, he even chased it all the way to Fong State City. A trace of anger appeared on Elder Bo Yan's face and his voice rose a little. Sect leader Jin, I don't think I need to explain what kind of place Fong State City is, right? He came to our territory to cause trouble. Do you expect us to be polite? Jin Minyao snorted coldly. Even so, you could have just taught him a lesson. Why did you have to be so ruthless? How was it us who was ruthless? It was clearly Jin Lei who was seeking his own death. Elder Bo Yen was so angry that he laughed. From the beginning to the end he was the one who urged the people from the other sects to join forces with him to deal with Lingxiao College. In the end, when he saw that the situation was hopeless, he tried to kidnap our disciple. He didn't hesitate to burn the power of his bloodline to snatch the sacred weapon. Hearing this, a trace of shock flashed across Jin Minyao's face. Obviously he didn't know that Jin Lei was so determined to snatch the sacred weapon. He didn't even hesitate to use his own life as a stake to fight for it. Even if we don't kill him, he won't be able to live anymore. Elder Bo Yen reprimanded coldly. It was rare for Jin Minyao to be speechless. He paused for a moment before retorting. He was in the wrong in this matter, but he didn't deserve to die. Now that he died in Fang's state, I have to at least bring his corpse back. Otherwise, how can I explain it to everyone in the sect? And the person who killed my beloved disciple must also be found. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. This time even the other elders present couldn't bear to listen to it. However, before they could speak, they heard a voice from outside the door. I killed Jin Lei. This voice was cold and noble, and it revealed a sense of arrogance, causing others to unconsciously become nervous upon hearing it. Everyone turned around to look. A tall and slender figure appeared in front of everyone. Elder Bo Yen asked, Rongxia, why are you here? Jin Minyao was stunned at first, then he narrowed his eyes dangerously. Yuntian Tower. Rongxia, this matter is related to me, so of course I have to come. Rongxia gave Elder Bo Yen a reassuring look and stepped into the room. He walked to the innermost position and faced Jin Minyao. Jin Lei tried to harm me, so it's only right for me to kill him instead. Why, Sect Master Jin? Are you going to seek justice for him? Jin Minyao's expression turned ugly. He only knew that Jin Lei had been killed in Fangzhou City, but he didn't know who it was. He originally thought that it was one of the elders of Lingxiao College, but who knew that the culprit was Rongxia? To be honest, he would rather offend the elders of Lingxiao College than become enemies with Rongxia. This was because Rongxia was a ruthless character. He had no background and was bullied constantly, but after enduring for several years he was able to ascend to the position of the Son of God and control the Yuntian Tower in his own hands. Just from this alone, one could tell what kind of person he was. Moreover, although Lingxiao College had a strong foundation and was powerful, it was still a college. When faced with problems, there were too many shackles and it was bound by many restrictions. When one part of the body was affected, Lingxiao College would often choose a gentler way to deal with the problem. This was also one of the reasons why he dared to visit them directly this time. However, the Yuntian Tower was different. In the past few years, after Rongxia ascended to the position of the Son of God, he had made a lot of moves. The combat power of the soldiers under his command was also very strong. He had no doubt that as long as Rongxia gave the order, the entire Yuntian Tower would become a sharp sword in his hand. At his beck and call, Jin Minyao took a deep breath. Rongxia, I know that you are powerful. But you killed my disciple just like that. Don't you have anything to show for it? Rongxia put one hand behind his back and looked very calm. His thin lips were slightly curved, but there was no smile in his eyes, only coldness. So what if I killed him? There was no superfluous explanation, only this simple and straightforward answer. Oh, as for his corpse, don't think about it, Sect Master Jin. He died in Ai's hands and there was nothing left of him at that time. Rongxia said indifferently. Jin Minyao finally couldn't hold back anymore. He slammed the table and suddenly stood up. Rongxia, don't go too far. Rongxia looked at him coldly. Elder Bo Yen also stepped forward and reprimanded, Sect Master Jin, don't forget where you are. Although they didn't want to completely fall out with the Golden Wing sect, if the other party kept doing this, then there was nothing to say. Jin Minyao suppressed his anger and changed the topic. The person who fought with Jin Lei for the divine weapon isn't here now, right? Rongxia narrowed his eyes dangerously. Elder Bo Yen and the others were also stunned. Jin Minyao sneered. Although I wasn't there at that time, I wasn't completely ignorant. There are some things that I am very clear about. A large part of the reason why Jin Lei died in the end was because of the person who fought with him for the divine weapon at the last moment. If it wasn't for that person, Jin Lei wouldn't have had to burn the power of his bloodline, and the things that happened later wouldn't have happened. his eyes swept across everyone with a gloomy gaze. As long as you hand over that person, we'll write this matter off. Pingmin Mountain. Time passed slowly. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and focused on cultivating. The surrounding force continuously flowed into her body. The aura around her body kept rising. This time she could clearly sense that when she cultivated here, her condition was indeed different from when she was outside. The force here seemed to be inexhaustible, and it could subtly merge with her body. Not only could it quickly enter her body, it could also smoothly flow between her limbs and bones, becoming her own strength. Of course, this force eventually gathered in her dantian. The water droplet floated silently. 7 lines were engraved on it, becoming brighter and brighter. In here, Chu Luiyue almost forgot about the time. When Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and focused on cultivating, the lines on the 4 walls started to come alive again. They moved with Chu Luiyue's breathing in a strange rhythm. The power in her body was accumulating more and more. At a certain moment, a crisp shattering sound was suddenly heard. Chu Luiyue was stunned, and then she was surprised to find that the sound came from the Black Pyramid. It was probably because the power kept surging around it back and forth, causing it to shatter. Looking at the sudden appearance of the 4th crack, a scene suddenly appeared in Chu Luiyue's mind. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:11. That was a cliff. There was an octagonal pavilion on the cliff. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She was very familiar with this scene. Because she had seen it more than once. She still remembered that she and Rongxiu had played chess here. It was also here that the two of them had agreed to wait for her to return to Tianling to discuss the marriage contract with her father. However, Chu Luiyue quickly realized that this time, the scene was much clearer than before. More importantly, she was finally able to see the scenery around the cliff. She seemed to be standing in the octagonal pavilion again. Looking around, the surrounding mountains were undulating, verdant and lush. At the bottom of the cliff, there was a blue river meandering past. She vaguely felt that this place was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. Then she walked to the edge of the octagonal pavilion and looked in another direction. Suddenly her movements froze. Looking at the scenery in the distance, her heart beat violently. It was a lake that was surrounded by mountains. For some reason, the terrain of the lake was not low. Looking from here, it was almost at the same level as the mountainsides of the mountains. In addition, the mountain peak she was on was particularly high, so although the mountain range in front of her stretched out, it did not affect her vision. This allowed her to clearly see the lake water and the surrounding scenery from here. The brilliant sun poured down and the blue waves rippled and sparkled. On top of it, there were translucent light pink flowers blooming. Some of them quietly floated on the surface of the water, swaying with the waves. Some branches spread out and swayed in the wind. Beside the lake, there were some other types of medicinal herbs. They seemed to be full of vitality, and it was obvious that they were taken care of very well. The faint white mist lingered, making everything seem even more ethereal and immortal. Everything was as beautiful as a fantasy. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but she did not know what to say for a moment. Only deep shock was left in her heart. Almost at the instant she saw that scene, she understood that it must be the medicinal garden. So this is what it looks like. So standing here, you can see such a scenery when you raise your head. Chu Luiyue looked around again. She suddenly remembered the location of this cliff in the academy. This was the area where mystic cultivators and celestial physician were connected. It was not far from Medicine Wind Valley in a straight line, but due to the terrain one had to take a big detour to get there. Most people would beat around the bush. But she wouldn't. Because she had been to that medicinal garden. Donghuang Clock Tower. Because of Jean Minyao's sudden suggestion, the entire hall fell into silence. Silently, there seemed to be a gust of cold, murderous intent spreading out. Everyone present was a top-notch expert. Naturally, they quickly detected the source of the killing intent, Rongxiu. His expression didn't change much, but it inexplicably made people feel frightened. Sect head Jean. Rongxiu spoke with a cold and indifferent tone, and it actually seemed to be even colder than his usual cold and cheerless tone. Jean Lei's death was his just desserts. If you continue to pester me, I will be waiting for you at the Yuntian Tower. Jean Minyao was shocked. Only then did he realize the seriousness of the matter. What does Rongxiu mean by this? The corner of his mouth twitched. Xiao, are you provoking me? For an insignificant person? He had made it very clear just now. As long as they handed that person over, he wouldn't pursue the matter any further. But looking at Xiao's reaction, it was as if he had made up his mind to protect that person. Jin Minyao was curious. Interesting. I wonder who that person is to make the holy son of the Yuntian Tower so protective? Xiao's thin lips curled into a cold smile. It's someone you can't afford to offend. You? Jin Minyao's expression changed. But looking at Xiao's cold and stern eyes, he didn't seem to be joking. He couldn't help but hesitate. At this moment, Elder Bo Yen also took a step forward and his aura spread out. Sect Head Jin, do you still want to continue today's matter? The warning was self-evident. Jin Minyao frowned. This was Lingxiao College's territory. He came here alone. If they really fought, he was no match for these people. After thinking about it, he finally decided to give in. Fine. Since you're so protective then, I'll let him go this time. But I'll investigate that person's identity thoroughly. If we meet in the future. He snorted coldly. It's time for him to pay his debts. With that, he waved his sleeves fiercely and strode out of the door. Sect Head Jin. Xiao suddenly called out to him. Jin Minyao stood still and turned around impatiently. But he saw Xiao's face suddenly bloom with an extremely faint smile. You can try. Jin Minyao left angrily. Everyone in the hall felt that they had vented their anger. They looked at Xiao with more admiration and gratification. Elder Bo Yen glanced at Xiao and hesitated. He actually wanted to ask what was the relationship between Xiao and that Chuyu. Brothers? Xiao's mother seemed to have only given birth to him. Not long after, his mother's side of the family did not seem to have any other relatives. Friends. But they seemed to be closer than that. At the very least, he had never seen Xiao get angry for anyone else. But now, as long as it involved Chuning, it seemed to easily affect his emotions. This was really strange. Teacher and friend? That seemed to be close. Otherwise, Xiao would not have been able to teach Chuning how to open the school's barrier. Elder Bo Yen thought about it and came up with an answer. These two people should be able to get along well. Xiao's personality had always been like this. It was extremely difficult for others to get close to him. But when he was with Chuyu, he seemed to be especially relaxed and let down his guard. Seeing that Chuyu was willing to risk his life to help Xiao, the two of them should be very close. Elder Bo Yen did not ask in the end. The crowd quickly dispersed. Xiao also returned to his residence. In the blink of an eye, it was the beginning of the month again. The school's monthly assessment was held as usual. Just like before, a few new students were recruited, while the older students continued to take the assessment. After a month, Luo Shishir and the others had basically adapted to life in the school, and they had all achieved good results in their respective assessments. But because Chu Luiyue had not appeared for a long time, they were not in a good mood. Sigh, if only Chuyu was here. Zhou Xian touched his chin and said regretfully. Without him it feels a little boring. I originally wanted to see how his assessment results were this time. Too many things had happened in the past month, and now they were very clear that the kid had hidden his true strength. Originally, they wanted to find an opportunity to ask him about it. Unfortunately, he was locked up in Mount Pingmin again. I heard that the environment in Mount Pingmin is harsh and the punishment is harsh. I wonder how he is doing there now. Luo Shishir muttered. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:12. Sure, I don't think you should be too worried. That kid caused such a huge mess, but he was only locked up in Min Mountain for a month. He's already very lucky. Moreover, I heard from Elder Wanjing that he was about to break through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician, but he was delayed by the incident that day. However, when he comes out, it shouldn't take long for him to break through. Luo Yanming was very open-minded about this matter. He looked up at the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Maybe after a while he'll be able to enter the Azure Cloud leaderboard. When that time comes, it won't be right if we're still not there. That's true. Sure, we have to hurry up and cultivate. Zhou Xian said in agreement. Luo Shishir pursed her lips slightly and nodded seriously. At the same time in the Donghuang Bell Tower, Elder Bo Yen and the others gathered here again. Together with them were a few students who participated in the fight for the venerable divine weapon. Everyone sat down in their respective seats, but there was a strange look on their faces. Everyone's here. Xiu, you said that you had something important to announce. Can you say it now? Elder Bo Yen looked at Xiu. That's right. The reason why they were here today was because Xiu had gathered them. Ordinary students did not have the right to do so. However, Xiu was different. Moreover, from the conversation between Elder Bo Yen and Xiu, he could vaguely tell that this matter seemed to be related to the venerable divine weapon, so he did not dare to delay and called everyone here. Among them were a few students who had left a few days ago. Pfft. I thought that Elder Bo Yen had some urgent matter to discuss with us, so I rushed back without stopping. Who knew that it was actually because of Xiu? In the quiet room, a sarcastic voice rang out. Wei Shiping leaned back in his chair with a mocking look on his face. I really didn't expect that Xiu's position in the academy is already higher than many of the elders, to the point where he can order us around as he pleases? Wei Shiping. Elder Bo Yen frowned. What we're going to talk about today is related to the Blue Feather Abyss. That's why I summoned all of you back. You don't have to target Xiu like this. Wei Shiping felt disdain in his heart as he laughed lazily. That matter? Wasn't it already over? Xiu had single-handedly turned the tide and snatched back the treasure. It could be said that he had contributed greatly. What does it have to do with us? The atmosphere became even colder. Everyone could hear the mockery and sarcasm in his words. Many people looked at Xiu. Unexpectedly, Xiu didn't seem to be angry. Instead, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He looked at Wei Shiping and said, It's true that this matter doesn't have much to do with the others, but it is inextricably linked to you. Wei Shiping's heart skipped a beat. Xiu, what do you mean by that? Xiu said indifferently, That day Elder Shu Feng and the others set up a barrier and forcefully opened up space, preparing to return to the academy directly. This was a plan that the elders had made long ago, and it was carried out smoothly. Logically speaking, they should have been able to return smoothly. However, Jin Lei and the others still chased after them. Wei Shiping, don't you think that this matter is a little strange? Wei Shiping's heart beat wildly and a trace of panic flashed across his eyes. He tried his best to calm himself down and said with a cold face, Xiu, are you doubting me? That Xian formation was built with everyone's strength. If there wasn't a problem somewhere, Jin Lei and the others wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it. Xiu's slender white fingers tapped lightly on the armrest of the chair. Then he raised his eyes and looked straight at Wei Shiping. I'm not doubting you. I'm pointing you out. Xiu. Wei Shiping suddenly stood up from his chair, his expression furious. This matter is of great importance. Don't you dare slander me. I know you don't like me, but with all the elders here, don't you dare try to slander me. He was extremely agitated and his voice was much sharper. No one knew if it was because he was angry or because of some other reason. The elders present were all shocked. They looked back and forth between Xiu and Wei Shiping in bewilderment. Xiu, you're saying that Wei Shiping was behind the incident that day? Elder Shu Feng furrowed his brow tightly as he asked anxiously. He also felt that something was wrong. The Xian formation was almost split open by the golden lightning, but with Xiu's help, it was completed successfully. Normally they could completely rely on the Xian formation to shake off the people behind them. But they didn't. At that time the situation was urgent and he didn't have time to think about it. But after it was over, every time he thought about it he felt a little strange. It wasn't that he didn't have such suspicions, but because the people who helped were the academy's elders and students, he really didn't want to suspect them. So he subconsciously let it go. Now that he heard Xiu's words, he suddenly came back to his senses. You have to have evidence before you speak. Seeing that the elders present were about to be led astray by Xiu, Wei Shiping hurriedly shouted. Xiu, do you have any evidence? At that time his movements were extremely subtle, and it was impossible to leave any traces behind. Thinking of this, Wei Shiping sneered. Xiu's words had no evidence. He had to take this opportunity to kill him. However, Xiu's next sentence made the corner of his mouth curl up suddenly freeze. Since I dared to say this in front of so many people, I naturally have evidence. Xiu smiled faintly and said calmly. Wei Shiping's heart skipped a beat. Impossible, impossible. He quickly recalled the situation in his mind again, but still couldn't find any problems. Is Xiu tricking me? Then show me the evidence. Wei Shiping shouted fiercely. Rong Xiu raised his chin. The evidence is with you. You can take it. What? Wei Shiping was stunned. Rong Xiu explained patiently. At that time the Xian formation was struck by Jin Lei and was on the verge of breaking. I repaired it with my own strength and completed the Xian formation. As a result, every line on the Xian formation contained my strength. With every word Rong Xiu said, Wei Shiping's face turned paler. The reason why Jin Lei and the others could take the opportunity to catch up must be because the Xian formation was damaged. And the ball of strength that was deliberately left behind is still in the body of the person who did it. Wei Shiping's lips trembled slightly. If you want to prove your innocence, you just have to draw a Xian formation on the spot. See if there is an extra portion of my strength on it. Rong Xiu leaned back and looked at him disdainfully as if he was looking at an ant. Wei Shiping, do you dare? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12-13. Rong Xiu finished speaking. The hall was dead silent. Everyone looked at Wei Shiping. As the saint of the Yuntian Tower, Rong Xiu had already cultivated the saint's golden body. Therefore the force in his body was very special. It was an extremely rare and brilliant gold that was very easy to recognize. Wei Shiping, what do you say? Elder Bo Yen asked in a deep voice. Wei Shiping's back was drenched in cold sweat, almost soaking his inner shirt. His clothes were sticky and stuck to his body, tight and uncomfortable. He opened his mouth and found his voice with great difficulty. He suddenly raised his head with a furious expression. This is a humiliation to me. I refuse. However, this move of his was useless against the elders present. Elder Shu Feng sneered. If you refuse, it means that you agree. I just want you to perform a Xian formation. Why is it so difficult? Wei Shiping swallowed his saliva with difficulty and retorted. There were so many people there that day. Anyone could have made a move. Why do you only suspect me? Then we will investigate all of them. Seeing him like this, Elder Shu Feng was even more certain of his suspicions. When he thought of the dangerous situation that day, he was furious. It wasn't easy for them to work together and bring that thing back. But because of Wei Shiping's selfish interests, it led to so much trouble later on. If he was sure that it was Wei Shiping, he would be the first to not let him off. We will start with you. Everyone else will follow suit. Why don't we start with me? At this point, Wei Shiping could no longer refute. He stood there with his hands hanging by his side. His face was pale and his entire body was trembling slightly. In the past few days after returning, he had been busy recuperating from his injuries. He was secretly upset that he did not injure Rong Xiu in this battle. His only consolation was that from now on Rong Xiu and the Golden Wing sect had completely formed a grudge. Even if it looked calm on the surface, he knew that Jin Minyao was a narrow-minded person. Rong Xiu had killed his most valued disciple in front of everyone. He would definitely not let this matter rest. However, he did not expect that before Jin Minyao could do anything to Rong Xiu would be the first to expose him. Furthermore, it was in front of so many elders of the academy. Everyone present, including the students, was an important figure. His actions were undoubtedly a betrayal of the academy. Once he admitted it, there was no turning back. Countless gazes fell on his body, like incomparably sharp blades, ruthlessly scraping his body, as if they wanted to cut off all the skin and flesh on his body. Only his naked body was Xiu's. It was as if a hand was tightly gripping his heart and blocking his windpipe, making it impossible for him to breathe. In fact, even if he didn't say anything, his reaction at this moment had already surpassed all words. Elder Bo Yen shook his head and sighed. Wei Shiping, do you know what kind of crime it is to betray the academy? I did not. Wei Shiping instinctively retorted. His voice was sharp, but his eyes could not hide his emotions and panic. I really did not. Elder Bo Yen. Master, please help me say something. It was useless to beg Elder Bo Yen. The only person he could rely on now was his own master, Elder Jiang Lei. However, Elder Jiang Lei was no fool. Now that this matter was obviously done by Wei Shiping, the academy would definitely not let him off easily. Not to mention that his position in the academy was not as high as Elder Bo Yen and the rest. He did not have much authority to speak. Even if he had the authority, he could not speak up for Wei Shiping. It was the fault of a teacher if he did not teach his son well. Previously he was kept in the dark and that was still pardonable. But if he spoke up for Wei Shiping now, that would be deliberately condoning and covering up for him. At that time he would also be implicated. These thoughts quickly flashed through his mind. After weighing the pros and cons, Elder Jiang Lei immediately made a choice. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Wei Shiping with a furious expression. You only have to say if you did this. Have you done anything to betray the academy? Wei Shiping's heart sank. He knew his master the best. Since he said such words, it was obvious that he was on the academy's side. He gritted his teeth and his expression kept changing. Master, even you don't believe me? Elder Jiang Lei flung his sleeves and said coldly, whether I believe you or not depends on the evidence. Now, how do you expect me to believe you? You left the academy for more than a year and rarely came back. How can you hide this from me and do such a thing? Wei Shiping sneered in his heart. Is he completely removing himself from the blame? When something happened to him, his closest master was not thinking about how to protect him, but how to not be implicated. That's enough, Jiang Lei, don't be so angry. Although he is your disciple, his hands and feet are on his body. What he wants to do, you can't always control it, right? Elder Bo Yan's expression was very calm. He raised his hand and signaled Elder Jiang Lei to sit down calmly. Elder Jiang Lei angrily turned his head away with a hint of guilt. Bo Yan, I did not teach my disciple well. I am also responsible for this. This has nothing to do with you. Elder Bo Yan shook his head. If it weren't for Rong Xiu's meticulousness and the fact that he left behind evidence, even I wouldn't have expected him to do such a thing. Just like what you said before, he has already left the academy for quite some time. Even if he really planned something, he wouldn't let you know. Elder Jiang Lei secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but his expression became more and more pained. He held his forehead with one hand and seemed to be very pained. Looks like this matter needs to be reported to Qing Gupa. This sentence finally caused Wei Shiping's tense mind to completely collapse. Elder. He was both shocked and angry as he looked at Elder Bo Yan in disbelief. This is my own matter, why should I? Until now you still refuse to admit it. Then in order to not wrongly accuse you, let's invite the people from Qing Gupa to come and investigate together. The academy and Qing Gupa have always been on good terms. I think they will not find it troublesome. Elder Bo Yan said lightly. Wei Shiping's heart fiercely sank. This was putting him to death. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 12-14. Wei Shiping clenched his fists tightly. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If this matter was blown out of proportion, he would be greatly affected. A large part of the reason why he was able to become a strong contender for the position of the next patriarch was because of his outstanding performance in the Spirit Firmament Academy. If the rest of the family Wei knew that he had done such a thing and was hated by the college, then would the family Wei choose such a treacherous person to be the next family head? It was obvious that it was impossible. I did it. Wei Shiping felt as if something was surging in his chest, driving him crazy. I admit it. I did it on purpose to let Jean Lei and the others follow. But I didn't want to betray the college. I just wanted to teach Rong Xiu a lesson. Even Wei Shiping found it ridiculous when he said this. Teach him a lesson? The one who was going to be taught a lesson was not Rong Xiu but him. Ever since he entered the college he had disliked Rong Xiu. Because Rong Xiu was always the most outstanding one. No matter how hard others tried, no matter how hard they tried, they always seemed to be inferior to him. The things that others yearned for and couldn't get no matter how hard they tried, he could always get them easily. Everyone was around the same age and they had entered the college only a few months apart. However, from the beginning until now, Rong Xiu had never seemed to be on the same level as the others. He was extremely talented and powerful. Not to mention he was now in charge of the Yuntian Tower. Wei Shiping felt that it was unfair. Why is it that Rong Xiu already has everything when I'm still racking my brains on how to curry favor with the Wei family members so that they can support me in becoming the head of the family? But he did not care about that at all. Of course Wei Shiping hated him. Therefore at that time he was blinded by his emotions and did such a stupid thing. Hearing that he had finally relented and admitted it himself, the hall fell silent for a moment. A considerable portion of the people sitting here had been to the Blue Feather Abyss before. The remaining ones had all participated in the chaotic battle in Fangzhou City that day. Therefore, after hearing this, almost everyone looked at Wei Shiping with anger in their eyes. Elder Bo Yen, now that things have come to this, I am willing to accept any punishment. But please don't tell anyone about this. Wei Shiping quickly recognized the situation in front of him. After admitting his crime, he immediately began to beg for mercy. I beg you, please give me a chance on account of my contributions to the academy. Elder Bo Yen replied. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Besides, as long as you and everyone else try your best to keep the news a secret, I'm willing to do anything. Wei Shiping said anxiously. Since the matter had already been exposed, it was most important to stop the losses in time. As long as they were willing, they could definitely keep this news a secret. If he really couldn't do it, he could at least endure for half a year. In the past 6 months, the competition for the successor of the family Wei had entered its final stage. Any black spot would be magnified infinitely by the opponent. Moreover, this was an absolute stain. At this moment, Wei Shiping didn't know that in the eyes of the crowd he was no different from a clown. Wei Shiping, do you really think that this matter can be kept a secret? Elder Bo Yen was still unmoved. Wei Shiping suddenly realized something and looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu, you wanted to kill me from the start, didn't you? How could he forget that Rong Xiu was still here? Even if the others were willing to keep this secret, what about Rong Xiu? Rong Xiu leaned back in his chair, his hands crossed in front of him, his entire body exuding an indescribable aura of nobility. This was the arrogance and disdain that was ingrained in his bones. This kind of person, no matter where, no matter the situation, seemed to always have victory in his grasp. Rong Xiu smiled faintly and said, "Same to you." Wei Shiping wanted to deal with him. How could he not be allowed to retaliate? Moreover, in the end he only exposed Wei Shiping's actions, he didn't kill him personally. Of course, this was because he knew that using this method would be much more painful than directly killing Wei Shiping. The academy will not tolerate betrayers. Elder Bo Yen stood up. Wei Shiping had a bad feeling in his heart. Elder Bo Yen, from today onwards, you are no longer a student of Lingxiao College. Later, this old man will personally strike your name from the school's register. From now on, you have nothing to do with Lingxiao College. Wei Shiping's face was pale, his mind blank. This was expelling him from the academy? Without the support of Lingxiao College, he would lose a huge advantage in the competition for the successor of his family. He didn't know how those people would laugh at him. Elder Bo Yen, can you really not give me another chance? He asked with difficulty. Elder Bo Yen narrowed his eyes and said, You have committed such a crime, this is what you deserve. If you want this old man to retract this decision, you must be able to persuade the dean to speak up for you. The dean's position was higher than his, so he naturally had the right to change his decision. But in Wei Shiping's ears, these words were no different from deep mockery. The dean had already left the academy a few years ago, and no one knew where he went. How could he find him to speak up for him? Moreover, based on the dean's temper, he would only give him a more severe punishment. He closed his eyes in despair. Wei Shiping left. No one asked where he was going and no one sent him off. The news of him being expelled from the academy would spread very quickly, and his reputation in the world of God would be greatly affected because of this. And on the family Wei's side, the situation would only be worse. But these were not matters for the academy to consider. Because of his own selfish motives, he had almost brought a disaster to the academy. This punishment was already considered light. Wei Shiping in the past, although he could not be compared to Rong Xiu, but in the past he was still able to do it. After the others gradually dispersed, only Elder Bo Yen and Rong Xiu were left on the Donghuang Bell Tower. Rong Xiu, this matter is all thanks to you. Otherwise it would not be good to leave such a hidden danger. Rong Xiu smiled. The person he is targeting is me, not the academy. With such a temperament we really can't let him live. Elder Bo Yen shook his head and took out a book. It was a booklet with a simple and unadorned binding. The cover was a hard bronze plate, and the Lingxiao College's totem was engraved on it. The surroundings were faintly golden, solemn, and sacred. This was the academy's name list. Elder Bo Yen opened it and quickly found Wei Shiping's name. He reached out his hand and slowly swiped across it. Wei Shiping's name quietly disappeared. At the same time, on the 4 walls of the Donghuang Bell Tower, the green cloud ranking suddenly appeared. Sparkling radiance shone. On it, Wei Shiping's name gradually dimmed until it completely disappeared. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:15. The commotion on the Azure Cloud leaderboard attracted the attention of many people in the academy. When they saw that Wei Shiping's name had disappeared, everyone was shocked. What's going on? Why did Senior Wei Shiping's name disappear? Only the Dean and Elder Bo Yen can summon the Azure Cloud leaderboard. What are they doing? Could it be that Elder is planning to erase Senior Wei Shiping's name as well? Just like the number 1 on the Celestial Physician list. It's different. That name was covered up by the Dean with a special method, but it didn't actually disappear. But this look, all the names below have risen by 1 place. This means that Wei Shiping has been removed from the Azure Cloud leaderboard by Elder Bo Yen. There's only one reason for this. Wei Shiping has been chased out of the academy? A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Although it wasn't said clearly, many of the older students in the academy could guess what had happened. It was also because of this that everyone was especially shocked. In Lingxiao College, expelling students was not a rare thing. At the beginning of every month's assessment, those who failed a few times would often encounter such a situation. But those people were forced to leave because they didn't have enough aptitude and couldn't adapt to the pace and environment of the academy. But Wei Shiping was different. He was an extremely famous genius student in the academy in recent years. On the Azure Cloud leaderboard, he was on 2 of the 4 leaderboards and was in the top 10. Such talent and results could be said to be dazzling. Therefore, when his name disappeared from the Azure Cloud leaderboard, it caused such a huge commotion. Outside the square, countless people saw this scene and discussed it. I haven't seen such a situation in a long time, Elder Bo Yen suddenly said. The last time it happened was because her name was erased by the Dean. The commotion at that time was even greater than now. After all, she was the number 1 on the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Every action related to her attracted extra attention. Elder Bo Yen sighed deeply. I wonder where she is now and how she's doing. She seemed to have suddenly disappeared, and there was no trace of her in the world of God ruins. Rong Xiu looked at the Azure Cloud leaderboard and said calmly, maybe. If she changed her identity, it might not be certain. Elder Bo Yen lowered his head. His old fingers slowly moved across the pages of the book as if he wanted to flip a page. But in the end he stopped, took a deep breath and closed the booklet. Maybe. He let out a long sigh. But that child, hiding her identity doesn't seem to be something she would do. She had always been a troublemaker. Just imagining the scene of her staying there peacefully. It was really strange. Hearing Bo Yan's words, Rong Xiu that was on the Azure Cloud sect. Was on On's cloud leaderboard. On the elder on the leaderboard on elder, said Rong Xiu as he turned around. I want to take care of Chuyu for a while. Shui, Elder Bo Yen was surprised. You want to take him as your junior? But your master isn't around recently, this. Rong Xiu coughed. Chuyu has his own master, so there's no need to trouble him to join the same master as me. It's just that her personality is a little mischievous and she easily gets into trouble. So during this period of time I want to guide her and teach her the rules of the academy, so that she won't be rash and cause trouble like this time. Oh. Elder Bo Yan's expression became strange. Are you sure? Rong Xiu had a cold personality and hated all kinds of trouble. But this time he actually took the initiative to teach Chuyu. It was really rare. It was as if the sun had risen from the west. Rong Xiu, what's your relationship with that kid? Why are you so concerned about him? Elder Bo Yen was interested and couldn't help but ask. Those who didn't know would think that he was his younger brother. No, according to Rong Xiu's temper, he wouldn't be like this to his younger brother. How strange. We used to have a relationship. Furthermore, he had saved my life this time. Or, if I hadn't taught him those messy things before, he wouldn't have been able to cause such a huge mess. I should have been the one to teach him. Rong Xiu's thin lips raised slightly, revealing a faint smile. Elder Bo Yen couldn't find out anything and his heart itched. But he also knew that if Rong Xiu didn't want to say anything, then no one would be able to get anything out of him. So he simply gave up. Since you've said so, this old man naturally has no reason to disagree. When he comes out of Pingmin Mountain, I'll let him go to your place to learn. Rong Xiu nodded, paused for a moment and said unintentionally, his place is very far from mine. When the time comes, it will be a waste of time to go back and forth every day. I happen to have a few empty rooms there, so I'll let him stay. Elder Bo Yen was already used to it and waved his hand. Up to you. Anyway, the two of them already knew each other, and Rong Xiu had even said that he took the initiative to bring that kid, so what difference would there be? That kid has a bright future, you have to teach him well. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Definitely. Pingmin Mountain 7th Tower. In a strange space, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged. The surrounding heaven and earth force flowed into her body rhythmically with her breathing. She could clearly feel the power flowing through her limbs and bones. Some of the power seeped into her flesh and bones, silently increasing her physical strength. The rest gathered in the water droplet in her dantian. The lines on the surrounding walls also surged around Chu Luiyue in a strange rhythm. After a long time, the old and low voice sounded again. The 1-month period is up. Kid, come out. Everything around her quickly returned to normal. Chu Luiyue slowly opened her eyes. A sharp and cold light flashed through her eyes. She stretched her muscles and bones, and a series of crackling sounds came from her body. This place is indeed extraordinary. She had only stayed here for a month, and there were faint signs of a breakthrough. According to normal calculations, even if she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, it should take about 3 months to break through from the middle of the 7th level to the peak of the 7th level. The speed of cultivation here was at least 2 to 3 times faster than outside. This time she had benefited a lot. More importantly, she remembered many things. Unfortunately, after she remembered the matter of the herb garden, there was no movement on the Black Pyramid. After that, she did not think of anything else. Perhaps, when her strength broke through again, she would remember more. Chu Luiyue put away her thoughts, packed up briefly, and prepared to go out. When she reached the door, she looked back again. That familiar and nostalgic feeling surged in her heart again. This time it was obviously stronger than the first time. Her eyes moved slightly and she turned to leave. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 12:16. Walking out of the space, Chu Luiyue came to the main hall. She stood still, turned around, and cupped her fists in the direction of the 7 doors. Thank you for taking care of me during this period of time. The other party snorted. Kid, don't let me see you again next month. Hearing the strong disdain, Chu Luiyue rubbed her nose. She wanted to say, I'll try my best, but after thinking about it, she obediently replied, yes. Go, go. Chu Luiyue bowed and left obediently. Walking out of the door, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. The fresh and cool air entered her lungs, making her feel refreshed. Putting everything else aside, this 1 month in here seemed to be more comfortable than the previous time. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed as she saw a familiar figure standing outside the barrier. It was Elder Wanzheng. Seeing Chu Luiyue come out, Elder Wanzheng's eyes lit up and quickly said, Chu Yu, Master's here. Come quickly. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why did it seem like she had just been released from prison? But seeing Elder Wanzheng's happy look, she couldn't help but be infected. With a move of her feet, she quickly walked towards Elder Wanzheng. Master, why are you here? When she arrived in front of Elder Wanzheng, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Elder Wanzheng looked at her from head to toe as he said, Don't worry. Master has been waiting here since morning. A month was really a long time. He was worried, so he came directly. Anyway, she was his disciple. If he didn't dote on her, who would? Suddenly, his expression froze, and then he widened his eyes slightly and asked in disbelief, Your strength seems to have increased? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips and smiled. I haven't officially broken through yet. That means it's soon. Elder Wanzheng blinked his eyes and his eyes flickered with shock. For a moment he didn't know what to say. According to the usual practice, most of the students who were imprisoned in Pingmin Mountain would be listless when they came out. Some of them would even be injured more or less. But not only was Chu Yu fine from head to toe, his aura was also much stronger than before. Elder Wanzheng looked at the 7th tower suspiciously. What was going on? Could it be that the old man gave you some face and made things easier for you? Elder Wanzheng murmured. As soon as he said that, he heard the old and deep voice. Wanzheng, what are you daydreaming about? Give him face. What a beautiful dream. Even if Bo Yen was here, he might not give him this face. Not to mention Wanzheng. An awkward expression appeared on Elder Wanzheng's face. If it's not, it's not. Why don't you just say it directly? Why do you have to scold me so harshly? The child is still listening. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Elder Wanjing adjusted his collar. Cough that, disciple, let's ignore him. It's even better if he didn't do it on purpose. What did this prove? To prove that his disciple was capable. Look at how radiant he is. Look at this aura that is getting stronger day by day. He had face. Go. Let's go back with Master. His cultivation as a martial artist might have improved, so might his cultivation as a celestial physician. He also wanted to see if his disciple had broken through to the 9th grade as a celestial physician. Chu Luiyue nodded and looked around casually. Elder Wanjing was stunned and asked, "Disciple, who are you looking for?" Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and smiled. "Nothing, let's go." Elder Wanjing did not mind. With a move he took the lead and left. Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. Halfway through, Chu Luiyue realized that the atmosphere in the academy was a little strange. "Master, did anything happen in the academy during this period?" Elder Wanjing nodded and then realized what she was asking. He explained, "Nothing much. It's just that Wei Shiping was expelled a while ago." Chu Luiyue still had some recollection of this name. That man seemed to be of high birth and was highly regarded in the academy. Otherwise he would not have been allowed to go to Grey Feather's Abyss. Why was he suddenly expelled? What did he do? Of course he did something he shouldn't have done. Elder Wanjing sneered. At Grey Feather's Abyss, in order to deal with Rongxiu, he purposely let Jin Lei and the others catch up. For such an act, just expulsion was already too easy for him. It was a few words, but it was very concise. Chu Luiyue quickly understood what was going on. It seems that everyone in the academy already knows about this. Of course. Bo Yen personally erased his name from the green cloud roll. Many people saw it. Elder Wanjing shook his head. I used to think that this kid was narrow-minded, arrogant, and jealous. In the end he did such a thing. If not for Rongxiu holding back, the academy would have been tricked by him many times. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. This matter was discovered by Rongxiu? Elder Wanjing nodded. The two of them walked for a while before Chu Luiyue realized that they were going in the wrong direction. Master, we don't seem to be going to your place? Yes. We're going to your place now. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She thought that Elder Wanjing rushed over to pick her up early in the morning to bring her back to test her current celestial physician's standard. As if he saw through her thoughts, Elder Wanjing chuckled. Don't worry, kid. Master does intend to test you. It's just that I chose to go to your place. Chu Luiyue smiled and asked, "Why did Master suddenly want to go to my place?" "Naturally, it's because you have to pack your things." Elder Wanjing stroked his beard. "It's a bit of a detour to go to my place. Why not come to your place directly? It's more convenient." Chu Luiyue was confused. "Pack my things." "Me? All right. You don't know about this yet." Elder Wanjing slapped his head. "After this you'll be moving in with Rongxiu." It was rare that Chu Luiyue didn't react. She subconsciously asked, "Me? Living with Rongxiu?" Why didn't she hear about this at all? It was just a trip to Pingmin Mountain. Why did she have to move all of a sudden? Moreover, she had to move in with Rongxiu. As one of the top students in the academy, didn't Rongxiu always live alone? Rongxiu seemed to have taken the initiative to mention this to Bo Yen. He said that he planned to stay in the academy to guide you during this period. It's more convenient for you to live with him. As long as he wasn't here to steal his disciple, Elder Wanjing welcomed him. Moreover, this person was Rongxiu. If his precious disciple could learn from Rongxiu for a period of time, she would definitely benefit immensely from it. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by. Others wouldn't have it even if they wanted it. Why did this kid look like he was startled? Elder Wanjing reminded her. Disciple, even though Rongxiu majored in martial arts and smithing, he is also quite accomplished in the field of celestial physician. This is a rare opportunity. You have to learn well from him, understand? In the midst of their conversation, the duo had already returned to the familiar mountain. Elder Wanjing laughed heartily. Rongxiu is already waiting for us. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1217. Chu Luiyue had mixed feelings when she saw the tall man in a white brocade robe halfway up the mountain. A month ago, one of them was the high and mighty senior brother Rongxiu, and the other was an inexperienced junior brother who had just entered the academy. But now they were going to live together for no reason. Rongxiu even said that he would Guide her? What had happened in the past 30 days? Elder Wanjing didn't notice her expression. He laughed and quickly flew over, landing in front of Rongxiu. Chu Liwei had to follow him. Rongxiu, you're here so early. Elder Wanjing greeted him with a smile. Rongxiu smiled and nodded. I had nothing to do. I knew that you were going to pick someone up early in the morning, so I came here to wait. I can't let you wait for me, right? Elder Wanjing was very happy to hear this. His words showed that he valued him and his precious disciple. Who else in the entire Ling Xiao Academy could receive such treatment? Kiske. Chuyu would definitely learn a lot from him. Hey Chuyu, why aren't you saying anything when you see Rongxiu? Elder Wanjing urged Chu Liwei to come forward. I remember that you two knew each other before, right? Not only knew each other. Chu Liwei cursed in her heart, but she also put on a smile. Greetings, senior brother Rongxiu. Rongxiu's deep eyes swept across her face and body, seeming to be warm. It seems that junior brother Chuyu has been doing well in Pingmin Mountain. His complexion is better than before and his strength has increased. And he should have remembered more things. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows. I'm not as good as senior brother Rongxiu. He can arrange so many things in a month. Elder Wanjing faintly felt that the atmosphere between the two was a little strange, but he didn't think much of it and said excitedly, Disciple, come and refine the pill. Let me see how your cultivation is now. In fact, when he saw Chu Liwei coming out of Pingmin Mountain today, he already felt that she should be stable. But if he didn't confirm it himself, he would feel uneasy. Chu Liwei knew that he must have been thinking about this matter for a month, so she nodded gently. This time, Chu Liwei chose the pill that she didn't finish refining. On the one hand, she hadn't used up all the medicinal herbs from last time. There were still a lot left, so she could use them and save a lot of trouble. On the other hand, in Elder Wanjing's eyes, she only knew how to refine one type of grade 9 pill, so it was reasonable for her to choose this one. When everything was ready, Chu Liwei started to refine the medicine. It was probably because her strength in all aspects had increased in this 1 month, so the refining of this pill was much smoother than the last time. Taking the medicine. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Elder Wanjing was satisfied with the result. Xiu. When this kid was handling the medicinal ingredients, he was obviously much more skillful than the last time. His control over the flames could be said to be perfect. Originally, he was a little worried that after being locked up in Min Mountain for a month, this kid would forget everything that happened before. Now he could finally relax. Elder Wanjing couldn't help but show off to Rongxiu, who was beside him. Rongxiu, what do you think of my new disciple? Rongxiu raised his brows slightly, and his lips curved up into a light smile. Very good. Is indeed outstanding, better than thousands of others. Elder Wanjing chuckled. I almost forgot that you two knew each other before. Then you must have already known about this kid's talent in this aspect. Rongxiu smiled but didn't say anything. Obviously he had tacitly agreed. Elder Wanjing stroked his beard. I've never heard you mention such an outstanding junior before. Rongxiu, you should have let him come to the academy earlier. Of course it was not too late. Chuyu is only 16 years old. He still has a lot of potential in the future. At this moment, a faint medicinal fragrance filled the air. It was Chu Liwei who had started to form the pill. Seeing the fist-sized pill floating quietly in the red flame, Elder Wanjing couldn't help but rub his hands. It seemed that this time he was really going to succeed. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but grin and said to Rongxiu, you don't know. Actually, when Chiyu tried to refine this pill for the first time, he almost succeeded. Unfortunately, Hua Feng, that blabbermouth, suddenly ran over and said that you were besieged. This kid was distracted for a moment and the pill was ruined at the last step. Sigh, otherwise he might have broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician at that time. Rongxiu squinted his phoenix-like eyes, and a hint of a smile appeared in the corners of his eyes. His originally cold and unapproachable face instantly became lively. Was that so? His voice was deep and pleasant. It seems that junior brother Chuyu is very concerned about my matter. Of course. Otherwise he wouldn't have suddenly failed at that time. Elder Wanjing didn't notice that something was wrong and nodded in agreement. This kid lied to me that he would go back and practice alchemy, but in fact he secretly ran out. Now that I think about it, it was clearly because he was worried about you. Otherwise, why would Chuyu appear beside Rongxiu at that time? With his rank 7 realm, he wouldn't not know how dangerous the battle would be, but he still went. This was enough to explain everything. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Bang! Chu Liwei slammed his palm on the medicine cauldron. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:18. A pill the size of a longan shot up into the sky. Chu Liwei grabbed the pill and kept it back into the jade box. The series of actions were done in one go, leaving only the lingering medicinal fragrance in the air. Elder Wan Zheng's attention was finally attracted. He stared at the jade box in Chu Liwei's hands, even more nervous than when he was refining the pill himself. Chu Liwei walked over and handed the jade box over. Master. Elder Wan Zheng was about to reach out his hand, but he quickly wiped it on his clothes before carefully taking the jade box. He took a deep breath to calm himself down. Click. The jade box was opened. The medicinal fragrance refreshed the heart. A perfectly round pill was lying quietly in the middle. The pill was sky blue in color and its color was even and rich. Most importantly, there were 9 lines on it. Elder Wan Zheng's eyes lit up with joy. Grade 9. Grade 9. Although it was a lower grade 9, it was indeed a grade 9. Even though he had already expected this outcome, Elder Wan Zheng was still overjoyed when he saw the grade 9 pill for real. It's done. Disciple, you didn't disappoint me. A 16-year-old grade 9 celestial physician was definitely one of the best in the entire academy. Haha. At the beginning of the next month, ascending the ascension rankings probably wouldn't be a difficult thing. When the time comes, many people's jaws will drop. Let those old fogies be envious. Rong Xiu, tell me, how was Chu Yu's pill refining this time? Elder Wan Zheng asked excitedly. It was inevitable that he wanted to show off after getting an outstanding disciple. Moreover, this person was Rong Xiu. Very good. Rong Xiu smiled and nodded. Congratulations, Elder Wan Zheng. With your guidance, junior brother Chu Yu's future will be limitless. Haha. This kid is really good. Elder Wan Zheng held the pill in his hand and couldn't bear to let it go. He couldn't wait to let everyone in the academy know that his precious disciple had broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician. Most people would experience many failures when they tried to cross this hurdle. However, Chuning was different. Including the times before, the number of times he failed did not exceed 5. It's really not easy to find a satisfactory disciple these days. In the past, the dean had gotten ahead of him. Fortunately, he didn't let this brat escape this time. Rong Xiu's eyes flickered. Chu Liwei suddenly asked, Master, that time? Who are you talking about? Elder Wan Zheng's laughter stopped abruptly. Only then did he remember that he had brought up the matter of the past in a moment of happiness. He coughed and covered it up. It's nothing. Something that happened a few years ago. I just mentioned it casually. I didn't mean to compare you with others. Elder Wan Zheng looked at Chu Liu's expression and felt a little guilty, so he quickly explained. I promise that you'll be the best at my side. Chu Liwei knew that Elder Wan Zheng had misunderstood. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but a warm feeling welled up in her heart. She wanted to continue asking, but when she saw Elder Wan Zheng's nervous expression, she swallowed her words subconsciously. She nodded slightly. Thank you, Master. There's no need to thank me. Elder Wan Zheng saw that she didn't seem to care about this matter and heaved a sigh of relief. He secretly told himself not to speak carelessly in the future. Actually, I didn't teach you anything. You were able to successfully break through because of your intelligence and hard work. Elder Wan Zheng knew very well. Chu Yu had only been in the academy for less than 2 months, and most of his time was spent in Pingmin Mountain. He didn't have much time to cultivate and learn from him. In fact, he really didn't do much. To a large extent, Chu Yu was able to break through to become a 9th grade celestial physician so quickly because of himself. But Elder Wan Zheng still felt honored and overjoyed. He had a premonition that this child would become a great person in the future. All right. Since you've already broken through and refined this pill, we'll stop here for today. It's getting late, so you should go back with Rong Xiu first, familiarize yourself with the environment and learn from him. I'll adjust your curriculum and we'll talk about it later. This child's talent was more outstanding than he had expected, so he had to adjust his plan. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows and looked at Rong Xiu. Your senior Rong Xiu is also quite accomplished in celestial physician. You'll definitely learn a lot from him. Elder Wanjing patted Chu Liyue's shoulder and said earnestly, his eyes filled with high hopes for her. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes. She had to admit that Rongxiu was almost perfect in the eyes of the Academy's elders. So no matter what he did, not only would he not arouse the elders' suspicion, but he would also receive their strong support. The only thing she could do was to agree. So she nodded. Then, from now on I'll be in your care, Senior Rongxiu. Elder Wanjing quickly left after returning the pill to Chu Liyue. Seeing how hurried and happy he was when he left, Chu Liyue could roughly guess what he was going to do. Looks like it won't be long before many people in the academy know that you've broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. Chu Liyue looked at him and her lips curved up slightly. Before that, more people should know that I'm staying at your place, right? If this news spread, it would cause as much of a stir as if she had refined a 9th-grade pill. Rongxiu didn't deny it. Said he chuckled. It's natural for us to stay together, isn't it? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:19. Chu Liyue looked at him quietly with a smile that was not a smile. Rongxiu, do you really think so? Rongxiu's eyes moved slightly as he looked at her. The two of them looked at each other and in an instant, there seemed to be an invisible wave circulating around the two of them. What do you want to ask? Rongxiu said softly. Chu Liyue looked into his eyes as if she wanted to see through his eyes and see through the deepest thoughts in his heart. She asked softly, I've been to that herb garden before. Why didn't you mention it before? On a mountain peak in the warrior area, Luo Shishir and Zhou Xian were fighting. Elder Wenxi had recently taught them a new martial skill, and the two of them were studying it. Sparring with each other could often speed up their understanding, which was very beneficial for cultivation. The two of them flipped around, one attacking the other, fighting fiercely. There were several times in the middle when Zhou Xian revealed flaws and was almost defeated by Luo Shishir. However, he managed to hold on, and at the end he took advantage of Luo Shishir's almost exhausted strength to launch a counterattack and narrowly won by half a move. I lost. Luo Shishir was sweating profusely and her cheeks were red. It could be seen that she had indeed done her best in this battle. However, there was no joy on Zhou Xian's face. Instead, he shook his head with a sigh. If I wasn't a few years older than you and broke through to stage 9 earlier, I'm afraid I wouldn't be your match in today's battle. Sure, you've improved so much compared to before. If this continues, you should be able to catch up to me and surpass me in no time. Luo Shishir pursed her lips and smiled. Brother Sheng's foundation is solid and his strength is tyrannical. How can he be caught up so easily? I still have a lot to learn. Zhou Xian laughed. Why be modest? I'm also proud that you can improve so quickly. We grew up together, so I know your talent and potential too well. If not, why would your father and the others agree to let you specialize in martial arts? The Luo family specialized in Xian masters. Most of the disciples in the clan had good talent in this area. For example, Luo Yanlin and Luo Yanming had both gone to learn Xian masters. However, Luo Shishir was different. Her talent as a martial artist was far greater than her talent as a mystic cultivator. Therefore, the Luo family had agreed to wait for her to enter Lingxiao College so that she could cultivate as a martial artist. As long as you cultivate well in the academy, you will definitely achieve great things in the future. Zhou Xian said. Perhaps at that time, you'll be the first amongst us to ascend the ascension rankings. To them, being able to ascend the ascension rankings was an extremely great affirmation and glory. Luo Shishir thought for a moment and smiled. Not necessarily. I heard that last time, Qi was almost able to refine a 9th-grade medicinal pill. Furthermore, his talent in other aspects seems to be very outstanding as well. In my opinion, it is more likely that he will be the first to enter the rankings. Zhou Xian stroked his chin and nodded as he recalled the scene he had seen earlier. That's true. That brat really hit it well. When he comes out, I must ask him how strong he is. Luo Shishir suddenly froze. Wait, isn't today the day he's coming out? Zhou Xian slapped his head. That seems to be the case. I've been thinking about that martial technique for the past 2 days and actually forgot about this. Luo Shishir thought for a moment and said, why don't we go and see him? Sure. I heard that the punishment in Pingmin Mountain is very severe. I wonder how he is now. The two of them reached an agreement and planned to set off. However, they had just taken a few steps when they heard a strange voice coming from the side. Chuyu is very powerful now. There's no need for you to worry about him. The two of them turned their heads and saw a familiar face. It was Gongxing and Lu Yintong. There were a few people following behind the two of them. It seemed that they happened to be passing by. Luo Shishir and Zhou Xian did not have a good impression of them. Hearing this, Zhou Xian frowned. What do you mean? Gongxing sneered. Don't you know? Chuyu has already climbed onto the coattails of senior brother Rongxiu. So what if he is imprisoned in Pingmin Mountain? With such a backer, Chuyu will be able to do whatever he wants in the academy in the future. Luo Shishir and Lu Yintong looked at each other with blank expressions. How did this have anything to do with senior brother Rongxiu? This meant that Chuyu and senior brother Rongxiu, aren't you two good friends of Chuyu? How come you don't even know about such big news? Although Gongxing was still smiling, the ridicule on his face was very strong. Just now, senior brother Rongxiu personally brought Chuyu back to his residence. I heard that Chuyu will be staying there for a period of time, and senior brother Rongxiu even plans to personally guide him. Right now the entire academy has spread the news. Luo Shishir and Lu Yintong really didn't know anything about this matter. They had been diligently cultivating recently and didn't pay much attention to the outside world. It was normal for them not to hear about this. However, this news truly shocked the two of them. The two of them looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. What was going on? That brat's luck is really good. He took a risk and found himself such a powerful backer. With Rongxiu's protection, who would dare to find trouble with Chuyu in the academy in the future? Those who tried to curry favor with him were probably the descendants of his talent. Even if he was unwilling to accept it, Gongxing understood in his heart that from now on, they would no longer be able to obtain any benefits from Chuyu. Originally he had wanted to wait for a chance to teach him a lesson and let him know how powerful he was. Who would have thought that before they could do anything, Chuyu would be one step ahead of them and take the initiative? It would be a lie to say that they weren't angry, and it would be a lie to say that they weren't jealous. Zhou Xian quickly reacted. Seeing the unconcealable ridicule and jealousy on Gongxing and the others' faces, he couldn't help but snort. That's because Chuyu has the ability. There are so many people in the academy, why did senior brother Rongxiu take a fancy to him? Some people don't have the ability or courage to do so, and only dare to talk behind their backs. It's truly despicable. Gongxing and the others' faces changed. What did you say? I'm talking about those despicable people, not you. Senior brothers and sisters, why are you in such a hurry to take a seat? Zhou Xian wasn't afraid of them. Just Luo Yanlin alone was enough to make these people fearful, not to mention the addition of Rongxiu. If these people hadn't taken the initiative to cause trouble back then, they wouldn't have formed a grudge with Chuyu. Everything that happened today was because they reaped what they sowed. Gongxing wanted to say more but was stopped by Lu Yintong. Alright, let's go first. Gongxing was furious, but when he turned his head and saw Lu Yintong's expression, he could only suppress his anger. He gritted his teeth and pointed at Zhou Xian. You guys can be arrogant. I want to see if Chuyu will still put you guys in his eyes with Rongxiu as his backer. Let's wait and see. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:20. After Lu Yintong and the others left, they all fell into a strange silence. Although they were very angry when they quarreled with Zhou Xian, they knew in their hearts that no matter how much they mocked Chuyu with Rongxiu's protection, he would really become an existence that could not be casually provoked in the academy. And this group of people just happened to offend Chuyu not long ago. Even they did not dare to say what would happen in the future. Gongxing was especially depressed and irritated. He followed beside Lu Yintong. As long as he turned his face, he could see her tightly knitted brows. Although she was also walking forward, she looked a little absent-minded, as if she had something on her mind. How could Gongxing not know what she was thinking? It was precisely because he knew that he felt even more uncomfortable. It was all because of that person. After walking for a while, the anger in Gongxing's heart rose instead of subsiding. His chest was pounding, almost rushing out of his chest. He finally could not help but look back at those people. You guys go first. I have something to discuss with Atong. Seeing his ugly expression, those people did not dare to ask any more questions. They responded and quickly left. Soon only the two of them were left on the mountain. Lu Yintong looked at him strangely. What's wrong? Gongxing suppressed his anger. Ah Tong, are you still thinking about Rong Xiu? A trace of embarrassment flashed across Lu Yintong's eyes as she looked away. I don't know what you're talking about. Gong Xing raised his voice. Isn't that so? Ever since he came back, I'm afraid you've been thinking about how to talk to him, haven't you? It's a pity that even though you're so obsessed with him, he might not even remember what you look like. Atong, why do you have to do this? Lu Yintong's expression became a little ugly. I'm just thinking about Chu Yu. If he didn't suddenly get involved with Rong Xiu, you wouldn't think so much, right? Gong Xing knew her too well. Even though Rong Xiu had left the academy for a few years, his appearance could still cause a commotion. And Lu Yintong was among them. Lu Yintong turned her head away and defended herself. I'm just a little regretful. I shouldn't have offended Chu Yu so rashly. Now that he has such a backer, what are you regretting? What are you afraid of? Gong Xing suddenly twitched the corner of his mouth and smiled sarcastically. Are you afraid that he will speak ill of you in front of Rong Xiu? But do you think Rong Xiu with his temperament and bearing will care about this kind of thing? To him we are just passers-by who have no sense of existence. No matter how much Chu Yu belittled you in front of him, would it still have any effect? Rong Xiu couldn't possibly come and find trouble with them just to help Chu Yu vent his anger. In other words, even if you curry favor with Chu Yu, he will praise you in front of Rong Xiu. Will Rong Xiu look at you more? The more Gong Xing spoke, the worse Lu Yintong's expression became. In the end, she clenched her fists tightly and her body trembled slightly. And don't forget, Rong Xiu already has a princess. Slap. Lu Yintong slapped Gong Xing's face. Gong Xing's face quickly became red and swollen. I know all this. I don't need you to teach me a lesson. Lu Yintong threw down these words. Her face was cold and her lips were pale as she turned and left. Gong Xing subconsciously raised his foot and wanted to chase after her. But after taking a step he stopped. Looking at the figure walking further and further away, a trace of pain flashed in his eyes, and he finally walked in another direction. When Luo Shishir and Gong Xing arrived at the mountain peak where Rong Xiu was, Zhuheng Peak, they saw that many people had already gathered here. Everyone looked at Zhuheng Peak with shock and doubt. Obviously they had also hurried over after hearing the news. There were low voices of discussion in the crowd. Everyone says that Rong Xiu will personally take Chu Yu. Is it true? Of course it's true. When they came back to Zhuheng Peak together, many people saw it. And it seems that Chu Yu will be staying at Rong Xiu's place for a long time. Hiss! Didn't they say that Rong Xiu has always been cold and arrogant? It's difficult for many people to get close to him. Why is he willing to take a new student now? I heard that Chu Yu helped Rong Xiu block a critical blow, which can be considered a merit. Could it be because of this? Tisgese Rong Xiu is the holy son of Yuntian Tower. With one order there will be waves of people who want to die for him. Who would he value so much for such a small matter? I heard some rumors saying that Chu Yu originally knew Rong Xiu. Ah, is it true? How come I've never heard of it before? I thought that Chu Yu was just an ordinary person with no background. Hey, can an ordinary person have a contracted divine beast like the red-tailed phoenix? Can an ordinary person defeat a rank 8 warrior with the power of a rank 7 warrior? From Senior Rong Xiu's attitude, it's not hard to tell that they definitely didn't just meet this time. Everyone was discussing and making all kinds of guesses. Luo Shishir and Zhou Xian looked at each other. Although they were more familiar with Chu Yu, they really didn't know anything about Chu Yu's background. Looks like I really have to ask this kid later. Zhou Xian touched his chin. If he really has a close relationship with Rong Xiu, then isn't he too low-key before? If it was anyone else, they would have already been unable to hold back and spread the news on the first day of entering the academy. Luo Shishir fell into deep thought. From the first time she saw Chu Yu, she knew that he must have an extraordinary background. But she didn't expect that it would be related to Senior Rong Xiu. Others might still be guessing, but she was already very sure in her heart. Because whether it was Senior Rong Xiu or Chu Yu, they were definitely not the kind of people who would do such a thing for a stranger. They must be familiar with each other in the past. It was even possible that their relationship was not shallow. Jiang Jiwan claimed to be Senior Rong Xiu's childhood sweetheart, and there was even news that she would be the princess of Yuntian Tower. But what about Rong Xiu's attitude towards her? From what she could see, Rong Xiu obviously didn't put Jiang Jiwan in his eyes. But Chu Yu was different. Rong Xiu was willing to spend such patience and energy to personally guide him, which proved that Chu Yu's relationship with him must be much better than Jiang Jiwan's. But what was Chu Yu's identity to be able to receive such good treatment from Senior Rong Xiu? It was a pity that outsiders couldn't enter Jiuheng Mountain at will, so they had no way of knowing the situation inside. Someone asked in a low voice, Senior Rong Xiu and Chu Yu have been in for a long time, why haven't they come out yet? The outside world was noisy and isolated. In the room, Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue sat facing each other. Chu Luiyue said, I've already followed you. Now can you explain? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:21. Rong Xiu did not give a direct answer to her previous question. But she had been to the herb garden. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes slightly. He had already thought that Chu Luiyue should have remembered something after coming out of Mount Pingmin, but he did not expect that she would remember so much. After pondering for a moment, he raised his eyes and asked, Other than the fact that you have been to the herb garden, do you remember anything else? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. As intelligent as she was, she could naturally tell that Rong Xiu was testing her. She said, No. I only remember that I picked herbs in that herb garden. After a pause she continued, That herb garden? Logically speaking, other than its owner, no one else can enter at will, right? Rong Xiu leaned back in his chair and pondered for a moment. That's right. Generally speaking, that is indeed the case. However, it's not like no one in the academy has ever entered it before. Because the land of the herb garden was personally moved out by the dean back then. Although it has only been a few years, there is no lack of all kinds of precious herbs. Some of them were specially taken care of by the dean. Therefore, there are also some people in the academy who will go to the herb garden to find some herbs. Of course, this requires the consent of the owner of the herb garden. There are not many people who can really get the herbs from it. Moreover, that place itself is next to the Medicine Wind Valley. Some people lose their way in the Medicine Wind Valley and accidentally enter that place. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. Senior brother Zhou Xian seems to be in such a situation. It seems that there are quite a few people who have been to that herb garden. She stared at Rong Xiu. So you're saying that I entered the medicinal garden because of these two situations? Rong Xiu paused for a moment. You really like to go there to pick herbs. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up and walked towards Rong Xiu. She stood in front of Rong Xiu, then bent down and looked straight into Rong Xiu's eyes. The two of them were extremely close to each other. It was as if they could touch each other if they moved. They could smell each other's breathing. Her eyes, which had always been as bright as stars, were now deep and serene. Rong Xiu's expression suddenly changed. Not only do I like to go there to pick herbs, but I also seem to like taking care of the herbs there? Ordinary people shouldn't have such qualifications, right? Chu Luiyue said slowly. Rong Xiu's heart skipped a beat. As expected, she remembered more. From the octagonal pavilion on the cliff, you can directly cross the mountains and see the magnificent scenery in the medicinal garden. You can also directly fly over from there. It's extremely simple and convenient. Rong Xiu's hand slowly tightened. Someone who can make the dean of Lingxiao College specially open up a medicinal garden for him must have a bad temper. I don't think he's someone who would allow anyone to come in and out of his territory. Chu Luiyue said slowly. Her red lips curled into a faint smile. Unless that's his place to begin with. Rong Xiu. Chu Luiyue looked at him and said word by word. The person whose name was erased from the honor roll of Azure Sky was me, wasn't it? Even though this sounded unbelievable when all the other explanations were eliminated, then no matter how impossible it was, the remaining one had to be the real answer. The room fell into a dead silence. Rong Xiu relaxed his body and leaned completely against the back of the chair. He raised his head slightly. An extremely faint smile appeared on his noble and enchanting face. Seemed like he was surprised but also relieved. Yes. Time passed, torturous and slow. The sun was setting outside the window and the remaining light shone in. Chu Luiyue, who had been sitting stiffly for an entire afternoon, finally exhaled slowly. It was rare for her to have such free time. She didn't cultivate, didn't comprehend Xian formations and didn't study alchemy. She just sat there and let her mind go blank. No, it wasn't that she didn't think of anything. The words that Rong Xiu said and those incomplete memories kept replaying in her mind. But at this moment she still felt that it was unreal. As if it was just a dream. But she knew it wasn't. That was all real. The person who was taken in as a disciple by the dean of Lingxiao College was her. The owner of the medicinal garden was her. The person who was erased from the honor roll of Azure Sky was her. To her, that person was originally just a legend that made people marvel at him. After hearing many things about that person, the thought of seeing that person with her own eyes flashed past her mind. But in the end she was actually that person? Chu Luiyue closed her eyes. Until now she still felt that this matter was too mysterious, to the point that even she herself was in disbelief. However, after solving this huge question, even more questions arose. For example, the ranking on the honor roll of Azure Sky. She only remembered that when she was betrayed by Shangguan Wan and the others, she was a 9th-grade celestial physician, a 9th-grade martial artist and a 9th-grade Xian master. But with this level of strength, at most she would be at the bottom of the honor roll of Azure Sky. It was impossible for her to be ranked at the top, and some even occupied the first place. According to Rong Xiu's words and her own memories, she first came to the Divine Ruins world and spent some time here before returning to the Tianling dynasty. And this time she never came back. But after she returned, why did her strength in all aspects regress? Furthermore, he had completely forgotten about everything that had happened in the Divine Ruins world. Chu Luiyue couldn't understand. Putting everything else aside, just the martial artist aspect. According to her ranking on the honor roll of Azure Sky, she should have already become a god-level expert. How did she fall back to a 9th-grade martial artist? Countless questions swirled in her mind. After thinking for a while, she suddenly stood up and walked outside. Almost at the same time, Rong Xiu also walked out of the room next door. "Where are you going?" Rong Xiu asked. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. "Qingming Square." After a pause she continued, "I just want to take a look first." Although the herb garden was hers, it was really inconvenient for her to go there with her current identity. There were many other places that were not convenient for her to go to now. After thinking about it, Qingming Square was the most suitable. Although ordinary students could not casually step into that place, it was still good to take a look. Vaguely, there seemed to be something urging her from the bottom of her heart. Rong Xiu smiled, his phoenix eyes revealing a look of understanding. "I'll take you there." With his status, it was no problem for him to go there. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. It was already evening and the sky was about to turn dark. There was almost no one around Qingming Square. However, Rong Xiu's every move in the academy was closely watched, so after the two of them came out of Mount Jiuheng together, they attracted the attention of many people. There were even some who quietly followed them here. The two of them didn't care about this. Chu Luiyue walked to the edge of the square and stood still. Rong Xiu looked at her. "Do you want to take a closer look?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1222. Chu Luiyue nodded. Rong Xiu took the lead and walked forward. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before following him. Both of them knew that she didn't come here to see Qingming Square, but the Azure Cloud Proclamation on the Donghuang Bell Tower. But at this moment the Azure Cloud Proclamation was hidden, and nothing could be seen from the outside. Only the black wall was left, deep and restrained, dignified and dignified. They walked to the front of the Donghuang Bell Tower and stood still. Chu Luiyue looked up. This was originally the location of the Celestial Physician's ranking. She still clearly remembered the shock she felt when she saw the Azure Cloud Proclamation for the first time after coming to the academy. At this moment, even though the Azure Cloud Proclamation wasn't summoned, but when she looked at it again, her feelings were completely different. She raised her head and looked at the highest position. There was nothing unusual there. But her name was sealed there. Looks like the news of Senior Rong Xiu personally guiding Chuyu is true. Why are they here at this time? Could it be that they want to see the Azure Cloud Proclamation? But if the elders don't summon them, the Azure Cloud Proclamation won't appear. What's there to see in this pitch-black place? What's so important about that? Who in the entire academy doesn't know that Senior Rong Xiu occupied 2 first places on the Azure Cloud Proclamation? Even if the Azure Cloud Proclamation doesn't appear, this is an indisputable fact. I guess Senior Rong Xiu wants to use this to motivate Chuyu? I also want to see the Azure Cloud Proclamation with Senior Rong Xiu. I also want to be guided by Senior Rong Xiu. Let's talk about it when your talent is comparable to Chuyu's. That Chu Yu's talent is not bad, but it's not to the point of angering the gods. If I work hard, I might not be inferior to him. I really don't know what Senior Rongxiu sees in him. Outside Qingming Square, many people were discussing. In the past few years, Senior Rongxiu had almost never returned to the academy, and the few times he appeared, he accompanied the elders. He had never appeared together with an ordinary student before. Moreover, this person was a new student who had only been in the academy for 2 months. This scene was truly too strange and shocking, so it was naturally unavoidable for it to arouse the discussion of everyone. These voices occasionally reached Chu Liyue's ears. But right now she didn't want to care about that. Something seemed to be driving her from the depths of her heart. She took a deep breath, raised her hand and reached forward. Rongxiu narrowed his eyes but did not stop him. Just like that, Chu Liyue's hand finally touched the cold and thick wall. Within his dantian there was a sudden fluctuation. It came from the Black Pyramid. Chu Liyue's heart began to beat rapidly, and the blood in his body began to surge. At the same time, the wall beneath her palm seemed to have received some sort of summons. An extremely familiar fluctuation came out from it and poured into Chu Liyue's palm. That was her power. Only those whose names were engraved on the honor roll of Azure Clouds would have such a connection with it. A glimmer of light suddenly came out from between her fingers. Chu Liyue was shocked. Before she could react, Rongxiu took a step forward and also covered the wall with his hand. It was only an inch away from Chu Liyue's hand. In the next moment, the light under Chu Liyue's palm quickly dissipated. As for that fluctuation, it was covered by an even more powerful force. Almost at the same time, a gray figure suddenly flew out from the Donghuang Bell Tower. It was Elder Bo Yan. Who summoned the honor roll of Azure Clouds? A deep and powerful voice reverberated throughout the square. The surrounding crowd was shocked. They couldn't help but take a few steps back. Chu Liyue was also affected by this vast power, and the blood in her body began to surge uncontrollably, rushing towards her heart. In an instant, it was as if there was a heavy force pressing down on her heart. Rongxiu's sleeves fluttered and an invisible fluctuation spread out, blocking that shocking pressure. Chu Liyue then heaved a sigh of relief. Almost subconsciously she retracted her hand. Elder Bo Yan quickly landed not far away from the two of them. Rongxiu turned around and took a step forward, quietly blocking Chu Liyue behind him. Greetings to Elder Bo Yan. Rongxiu. Surprise flashed across Elder Bo Yan's eyes. Why are you here? To you? Actually, when he heard Rongxiu's voice, he had already recognized him. But he didn't expect Chu Yu to be standing beside him. Looking at the two of them, it seemed like they had just arrived. That move just now, was it you? Elder Bo Yan put his hands behind his back and looked up at the Donghuang Bell Tower. The Azure Cloud leaderboard hadn't appeared yet, and that faint fluctuation had already dissipated. If it wasn't for the fact that he happened to be on top of the Donghuang Bell Tower, it would have been difficult for him to detect that subtle movement. Rongxiu nodded. It's me. Elder Bo Yan walked over. Why did you do this all of a sudden? Usually only the dean could summon the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Now that the dean wasn't around, he temporarily took over this responsibility. But in reality, other than him, there were a few people who could do this. Rongxiu, who occupied the first place of 2 of the 4 leaderboards, was one of them. Rongxiu's thin lips curled up slightly and he smiled faintly. I wanted to bring Junior Chu Yu over to take a look. Was he trying to use himself as an example to motivate Chu Yu? Elder Bo Yan muttered to himself. Although it sounded a little strange, Rongxiu had always done things like this. Plus, he had previously revealed that he wanted to guide Chu Yu, so it wasn't strange that he would do this. Oh, looks like you really have high hopes for Chu Yu. If I remember correctly, he seemed to have just come out from Pingmin Mountain today. I didn't expect you to bring him here directly. It was already the end of the month, and there were only a few days left until the beginning of the month. At that time, even if Rongxiu didn't take the initiative, he would summon the Azure Cloud leaderboard. As if seeing through his thoughts, Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. It's quieter this way. Elder Bo Yan was speechless for a moment. If it was someone else who said this, it would seem arrogant and presumptuous. But this person was Rongxiu, so everything seemed to become reasonable. After all, he really had the right to say such words. That's true. Elder Bo Yan nodded and carefully sized up Chu Liyue. Speaking of which, this was the first time he was observing Chu Yu at such a close distance. Although he had seen him before, he had never been able to take a good look. The young man had delicate features, a clean temperament and a generous bearing. Just from the surface, no one would have guessed that he actually had the guts to cause so much trouble. Chu Rongxiu thinks highly of you. You have to work hard to cultivate and don't let him down. As he spoke, he raised his chin and said with interest. I heard from Wanjing that you can already refine 9th grade pills. Why don't you try and see if you can get on the Azure Cloud leaderboard? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1223. He was a mysterious and powerful existence in the Red Moon Desert. He was a top expert who could forcefully reconstruct his divine body. He could freely enter and leave Lingxiao College without being detected by anyone. Or rather, no one dared to detect him. Why was she familiar with such a person? Moreover, he had helped her so many times before and after. Chu Luiyue didn't understand. When she found out that the person whose name could be hidden on the green cloud roll was her, the identities of the people around her became more and more strange and worth investigating. The door of the room was tightly shut. There was dead silence all around. Dugu Maobao's demonic purple eyes flickered with a faint light. There was still no expression on his cute little face. Dugu Maobao, he said. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Is that your real name? Or do you have another identity? Dugu Maobao narrowed his eyes. What do you want to ask? Naturally, it's something I should know. Chu Luiyue smiled. You should have known that I was on the green cloud roll long ago, right? Dugu Maobao didn't say anything. This was obviously a tacit admission. Then let's change the question. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. When did we meet? Was it after I came to the Divine Ruins world? Of course, I'm talking about the last time. Dugu Maobao shook his head and said lightly, no. It was a little earlier than that, in the Red Moon Desert. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Red Moon Desert? Not in the Divine Ruins world? Dugu Maobao walked to a chair and sat down very calmly. I was trapped in the Red Moon Desert for many years. I was finally able to leave after reconstructing my divine body. How could I meet you in the Divine Ruins world? Chu Luiyue frowned and countless thoughts flashed through her mind. Looking at Dugu Maobao, he didn't seem to be lying. Moreover, with his strength and identity, there was no need for him to lie to her about such things. Then, did they really know each other in the Red Moon Desert? But why didn't she have this memory? Then you and Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. She had originally thought that Dugu Maobao was the dean of Lingxiao College, who was also her master. But judging from his answer, that wasn't the case. Dugu Maobao seemed to have guessed her thoughts. His eyelids drooped slightly, and his thick and long eyelashes fluttered gently, hiding the slight fluctuation in his eyes. When he looked up again, the color of his eyes had returned to normal. I was indeed a student of Lingxiao College. But that was a long time ago, he said calmly. However, Chu Luiyue seemed to hear a sigh of the passage of time. It should really be quite long, right? Chu Luiyue thought to himself. If that was the case, then no matter what Dugu Maobao's identity was, he could be considered an elder of Lingxiao College. It was understandable that Elder Wanjing would be so respectful towards him. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Then why were you trapped in the Red Moon Desert? Oh right, there's also Senior Diwu and Senior Lan Shao. It's just an old matter. Let's not talk about it. It was rare for Dugu Maobao to interrupt Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue paused. She rarely saw Dugu Maobao react like this. It was obvious that he really didn't want to talk about it. She didn't continue asking. Dugu Maobao seemed to be the same as Rongxiu. They were tight-lipped about many things about her. Unless she recalled it herself, they wouldn't take the initiative to reveal it. So far, she had only recalled a very small part of it, and it was all related to the college. As for Dugu Maobao, she still didn't have any impression of it. Since you've recalled all this, then let's strengthen your training, Dugu Maobao suddenly said. Chu Luiyue was stunned. What? Dugu Maobao glanced at her. You and Rongxiu each took first place on the Azure Cloud leaderboard because you were on par with each other back then. However, after such a long time, you've experienced so many things. It's almost like you've started from scratch. Rongxiu, on the other hand, has never neglected his training. With his current strength, it's not impossible for him to surpass your ranking on the remaining 2 leaderboards. It's just that he didn't do that. Buzz. Dugu Maobao waved his small hand. A chessboard with a faint glow floated in mid-air. If you don't want to be left behind too far, come and practice. As he said that, he looked at Chu Liwei meaningfully. I've said it before. As long as you're strong enough, whatever you want to remember and know will come to you. Chu Liwei gritted her teeth and walked to the chessboard. Come. Since she could take first place on the Azure Cloud leaderboard back then, she could do it now. For the next few days, Chu Liu's days were very regular. During the day she sparred with Rongxiu. In the evening she played chess with Dugu Mabao. At night she brought Dumpling to Thousand Wine Mountain. Perhaps it was because everyone in the academy knew that she lived with Rongxiu and was highly regarded by Rongxiu. Therefore no one fought with her for the position of the spring. Every time she went there would be a spot reserved for her. Of course, there were also some people who tried to strike up a conversation with her. They wanted to find out more about Rongxiu. Or they wanted to use her as a bridge to get closer to Rongxiu. However, Chu Liwei did not pay much attention to these people. If they asked too many questions she would say that Rongxiu did not like her. Everyone was afraid and did not dare to pester her. Moreover, because they knew that she had Rongxiu behind her, they were angry but did not dare to show her any displeasure. This made Chu Liu's days in the academy much easier. Apart from this, she continued to study the new grade 9 pill recipes that Elder Wanzheng had sent her. Comparatively speaking, this was the easiest. Because she moved to Rongxiu's residence, there was no one else on Jiuheng Mountain, so it was much more convenient. When she cultivated, she had more freedom. In a short period of time, Chu Liu's strength in all aspects increased by leaps and bounds. In the blink of an eye, it was the beginning of the month again. Although Chu Liwei had been here for more than 2 months, because many things had happened in between, this was the first time she participated in the beginning of the month examination after officially becoming a student of the academy. She had already passed Elder Wanzheng's test, so it didn't matter whether she was tested or not. The key was the Azure Sky Proclamation. Early in the morning, almost all the elders and students of the academy had gathered at the Azure Sky Plaza. There was a hubbub of voices and it was very lively. Many people were eager to give it a try. They wanted to compete on the Azure Cloud rankings. When Chu Liwei arrived, she saw Elder Bo Yen and the others standing on the Donghuang Bell Tower at a glance. Chu Yu, you're finally out. At this moment, a familiar shout came from the crowd. Chu Liwei turned her head. It was Luo Shishir and the others. The one who spoke was Zhou Xian. He rushed to Chu Liwei as fast as he could and sized her up with curiosity and excitement. How does it feel to cultivate with senior apprentice brother Rongxiu? Can you get on the Azure Sky Proclamation today? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network.